folks here today.
Yeah.
Hey,
some people are not in Cincinnati.
yeah. Hello and welcome to the Atheist Experience. Today is Sunday, April 21st, 2019. I'm your host, and with me today is special guest Clare Wuellner.
Hi.
Hey, Clare.
Hi.
So you're here and you do some other things, right?
Yes. Actually, Godless Bitches, which I do with you, Tracie, and Jen. And that's on Saturdays, the first and third Saturdays of every month. And then Parenting Beyond Belief, which is on the second and fourth Saturdays of every month. And we get plenty of feedback that we're helping change people's lives, which is really rewarding. So check it out.
I think the family input is really big. You know, 'cause that's like a section of, I think, the community that was kind of late blooming.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Having had kiddos, of course, and trying to do things in the community, I know that anybody who has a family has been through this too. There are lots of pub crawls and there are lots of things that grown-ups do, and that's great. But if you have kids, it means that you have to find childcare, and that can be kind of tricky. But the other part is, of course, raising secular children chitlins in a religious world. And when I moved to Texas, I realized what a big deal that was, because the
where do you go to church?
Right. Yes, there's that. And then the State Board of Education, right when my kids were getting set to go into elementary school, they were trying to change the curriculum so that intelligent design was in the curriculum. And so that's where I got my start, was fighting that fight.
The McElroy
back
era.
in the day. Yes. And they got tired of fighting us, whoop-de-doo, and they kind of gave out just because they didn't want a three-ring circus anymore. Those were their words. So, yeah, that's some of the things I've done. And I'm also on the board of the ACA, and I'm president of the board of Foundation Beyond Belief. So
and
yes.
I just want to say, blue is a really relaxing color for me. So if I'm gazing longingly at your hair, like when things get stressful on the calls,
right on.
I'm not in love. It's just a relaxing color.
Oh, thank you.
Really relaxing. So. We are the Atheist Experience, and it is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a Texas nonprofit educational organization dedicated to separation of religion and government and the promotion of positive atheist culture. Folks know we have AACon going on, and we have a few things to say about that we'll mention later in the show. This time I will mention it before 5 minutes out from the ending. I'm going to remember. Yeah. And so we'll go on. We got some other announcements, but we will talk them through later. So I just wanted to, before we take calls, I did want to talk a little bit because I had an interesting experience. Obviously, I want to keep it, vague, the vague book thing. But had a conversation with somebody where I basically described a dog whistle, said, hey, this is something that religious people use that is like a dog whistle thing, right? This is a line that's often used to convey, trying to think of how to put it. So I can read some quotes that actually kind of help explain what I'm talking about. And for people that may not be aware of it, I mean, you've heard the term dog whistle a lot in the last couple of years, right? Like it's been really raised as a term. And so dog whistles are when a demographic of people who usually is in a privileged position in the social order wants to use some kind of terms to disparage and dismiss and diminish a group that generally is already disparaged, dismissed, and diminished to further, mistreat them. And usually, or it might just be that they want to promote their own ideology and they don't care that they're doing it at the expense of other people, and they're just going to go forward with that. And some terms that you might be used to would be things like law and order. I'm a law and order candidate, and that generally translates to people in the dog whistle area of hearing, as this is a candidate that wants to really go send the cops in and kick some asses in communities of color. This is somebody that they're describing tough on crime as being, I'm going to really amp up the racist aspect of law enforcement that a lot of people push back against. And other people that are outside, that are not people who want to necessarily marginalize communities of color more, and they don't exist in communities of colors where they're seeing this aimed at them, don't really know that this conversations happening. And that's why they call it a dog whistle, because the right people sort of hear it, right? The other people that are, bigots like me, they give me the wink and the nod when I say law and order candidate. And the people that are in the communities that are being oppressed by this kind of law and order are generally the people that understand what's being said, and they know what I mean by it. Right. And they know what's going to roll out once this happens as policy. But the rest of the community is just like, well, who's against law and order?
Yeah, who's against a moment of silence in school?
Yeah, it sounds
it's thinly veiled code.
It just sounds so innocuous to the uninitiated. If you're not involved in those conversations, if you're not on the giving and the receiving end of it, it just sounds like nothing.
Right.
So traditional family values, that sounds so nice. Who hates families?
Right.
Do you not like children? But it's used as a dog whistle by religious bigots in order to push for anti-gay legislation, right? Because it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And so you have this traditional family values thing that says gay people getting married is not a traditional family value because traditionally families were mom and dad and the two, the nuclear kids and
2.4 kids.
And so then you also are like, we don't want gay people to adopt because that's not a traditional family. You can't do that. And so they promote these, and a lot of people when they hear family values or traditional family values, they're thinking that sounds apple pie. But the fact is it's a raging homophobic dog whistle. And when you're on the giving or the receiving end, you know what you mean, right? And there was like all these things like the family association, right?
Oh,
the American families, it sounds so nice, right? Who doesn't want to
support the troops? Support the troops. Don't you support the troops?
You can have all these...
Yeah.
So there's all these dog whistles that go on that people hear. And when it comes to religion, there's one that's come up recently, and we've been seeing it more and more, and it is have a blessed day.
Somebody said that to me as I picked up my groceries at HEB just the other day, and I just kind of went,
Yeah, it's so I pulled some quotes, right? And basically this is an article, if I can find it, this is an article that... maybe I need to go down. Okay, so here we go. These are quotes from Christians. So these are Christians who say, I use the phrase, have a blessed day, and here's what I mean by it. And so the first one is, I'm thinking that have a blessed day has potential. I'm getting excited about its manifold benefits as I write. It signals that you are a Christian to another stranger out there who may be a Christian, kind of like a secret handshake. It's not overbearingly evangelical to those who are not Christians, and yet it opens the door for further discussion if they so choose. This is literally someone describing a dog whistle, right? They're literally saying, the cool thing about this phrase is that it allows me to tell people who are also the Christians who want to push Christianity that, hey, wink and a nod, we're in that in-group. And also, it's not overbearingly evangelical, so it goes in under the radar for people who aren't in my group. They don't recognize this as religious. And it lets me, quote, open the door for further discussion, which is basically it allows me to push this so that I can get somebody to respond so that now I can evangelize to them, right? So I can promote it to people that are not Christians and try to drag them into a dialogue and bait them into a dialogue with this. And I can also signal to other Christians so they know that we're both part of the privileged group. And it's quietly enough, subtle enough, that people that aren't on either end of this, the ones that we're not, trying to convert, and the ones that aren't already in the group, they don't really know. They don't see it. Another quote was about the implications, because I was saying this carries implications about God, about Christianity, and other people were like, no, it's not, this is not, it just means have a nice day, or it's just like a way of having a nice day. And here's another Christian says, when I hear someone say, have a blessed day, I make three basic assumptions. Again, this is a Christian talking. One, the person is religious. I don't see any reason why non-religious people can't be blessed, but the basic assumption is that they are religious. Two, they are Christian. And again, I see nothing wrong with non-Christians receiving blessings. And that leads to three, which is that the blessings we want to bestow are the blessings of God and not necessarily the blessings of Jesus Christ, right? So he's saying, I'm going to say it's not denominational, but it is totally theistic, totally signals to other people in the in-group. So we know we're the Christians. I'm letting you know I'm here too. Got your back, bro.
Yeah.
And this is all about making sure that you know that I'm telling you that God is working in your life for good. Which is cool if it's the other Christian you're talking to.
Yeah.
But when you're talking to people that don't believe in God, you might as well just walk up to them and say, oh, and by the way, you're wrong. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. But I guarantee these same people would be freaked out if I had a greeting that basically said, hey, there's no God and nothing in your life is about God. Because God doesn't exist.
Good luck out there.
Have a nice day, right? Like, it's just so aggressive. Because it's passive aggressive, right? I mean, when I say aggressive, it's like they're saying, it's not in your face aggressive. It's aggressive in a way that is like, I'm going to do the same thing, but in a quieter tone that is less objectionable to the people that don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Another one, what does have a blessed day mean to you? And they answered, I don't think I use have a blessed day, but when I hear it now, I think of it as meaning have a good day and remember to thank God for it. Somebody else says, to me, this is reminiscent of the cross versus crucifix debate. Although the crucifix might be more Catholic symbol, there's nothing wrong with a Catholic using a plain old cross at all. I say have a blessed day all the time. I always considered this as a very Catholic response, though it's appropriate for any Christian or anyone from an Abrahamic religion for that matter. So they actually do see it as more specifically doctrinal, right? Like, so they're basically saying it is a Christian thing for them. That's how they read it. And if you think about it, a few of the people previously said that even though they saw the statement itself as being kind of more broadly deistically applicable, they still said, I think the person's Christian. Like, like what I get signaled when I hear this is,
in the
you're a
United
Christian.
States, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are people saying have a blessed day in India? Like, I don't know. But
Probably.
but non-Christians? I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
So when someone, and this is another one, so when someone wishes you a blessed day, remember these two truths. First, you will have a blessed day, not because of what happens to you during the day, but because of the attitude in your heart and the awareness of God's purpose in your life. Second, you will enjoy the blessings that come your way as you learn to share those blessings with others. So again, it's like they understand this phrase to mean God, to mean religion, and I just want to make sure people understand this is a dog whistle phrase. Considerations, and there was another one I wanted to read. I want to see if I have that quote down. Might not have copied this one. I thought I did, but maybe not. But it had to do with somebody else there was an article in here it is. Yeah, this was an interview actually. That was in the Washington Times in the year, it was posted in 2000. So this was actually years ago, right? Like, this was a long time ago that this was posted, and it was, it's got some quotes in it. So the phrase this is from the article. The phrase is especially part of the American Black experience. Quote, they call it church language, unquote, says Patrice Shepard, assistant pastor of the Living Word Church in southern corner of the district. Quote, African Americans say, have a blessed day, and Anglos say, God bless you. If you're having a blessed day, then God is with you. It's a colloquialism in the African American church. Others say and then that's the end of a quote, and then this goes back to the article. I mean, it's all part of the article, but this part is not a quote. Others say it's part of Black church tradition to continually praise God, whether in or out of work. Quote, when people ask us how we're doing, we say we are blessed and highly favored of God, says Bishop Juanita Turner, pastor of New Covenant Church of the Lord Jesus Christ in Colmar, Manor. She says the majority of her members use the expression. The Reverend Bernard Richardson, chaplain at Howard University, calls it an, quote, evangelical tradition. I've heard it in white churches and black churches, he says. What's happening in terms of our culture is people are feeling freer to use the language of their church and their faith than ever before, unquote. Not everyone was thrilled with the increase of God talk at work. Quote, Have a blessed day is a religious statement, and it's not appropriate for a secular organization to be making it, unquote, says Matt Cherry, executive director of the Council for Secular Humanism in Amherst, New York. Quote, for an employee to say she has a right to make religious statements is not a matter of religious freedom. The company has a right to determine what employees say. If a customer is offended enough to complain, that speaks for itself. What she said implies you're blessed by God. Why not say, have a good day? And then this was the part that really caught me. But it's common for Black Christians to say, have a blessed day, no matter where they are, says Reverend Oliver Dwayne Walker, pastor of Phillips CME Church. Quote, we are aware that different groups are having negative feelings about that and may not subscribe to faith in God and feel that it's an infringement on them, he says. And to me, that is probably the most important admission. We know this pisses off people who believe otherwise, and that's fine with us, right? Fine with us. So you've got all the elements here of like the dog whistle. Number one, we know it upsets the targets. Number two, we know it's full of God, and a lot of us recognize it as a Christian thing. Like I see it as a Christian. They're saying that it's like a Black church thing, but they also admit more white churches are doing it, and that was in 2000. And I think by now, 2019, I see it. It's not a racial thing as far as what I see. Now, I'm not living in a community with a Black church, and it might be more prevalent there. I'm not saying that it is or isn't. I can't make that determination. I can say, though, that I see it, and I'm not going to Black churches.
Right.
So this is a dog whistle. And, you know, I had someone say to me recently, but it can mean other things, right? Like it can mean have a nice day. And kind of like what they were saying, you know, it reminded me of what I think it's Andrew Gillum said not long ago. It's not that I'm saying I think you're racist, it's that racists think you're racist, right? When you use dog whistle language, somebody could be using this and think that they're a Christian, they think it sounds nice, and they think it's a well wish, and it is their way of having a great day. Have a great day. And maybe they aren't totally aware of all of this. It could be that there's a lot of Christians that don't think that they're necessarily analyzing everything that comes out of their mouth or everything that they do. But the question is, if what you're saying is a dog whistle for religious bigotry, for religious promotion of ideology and diminishment of other, religious ideas, and you're using that phrase, and you're made aware of how this makes people feel in marginalized minorities, and you still want to use it, you have to ask, are you one of those people that is cool with the racist thinking that you're racist? Right? And one of the things that also caught me, if I can find it, I'm kind of losing my place here, but it's just like it's just one of those questions where, do you want to know? Like if I'm using a phrase or doing something and it has like these bigoted connotations to it that I'm not aware of, please tell me.
Yeah, I want.
Don't just walk away, like just say, hey, do you know what the implications are of what you just said? Because, if I'm running around saying I totally support traditional family values, please stop me. Stop me
Tell
and
me
say,
what that really means.
Are you sure? Because this is like a homophobic dog whistle, Tracie. Were you aware of this? Make me aware. Make me aware. I want to know. And I want to know because I do care if racists think I'm racist.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to be that person. So let me know if that's what I'm doing. And, I'm willing to assume that the person using it maybe doesn't understand what they're using. But at the same time, it doesn't matter because it's it's still it's still the dog whistle. And saying that people don't always mean it that way is basically just saying that it's an effective dog whistle.
Right. And if they keep doing it after you know that it's not okay, then it is flat aggression.
Yeah, I mean, hearing somebody say, yeah, I say it all the time, I know it pisses people off. LOL.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll pray for you.
All right.
That's another good one.
That's your thing, right? You be you.
It means nothing to me.
So there we go. And we have calls. That's all I wanted to say, but that was kind of my rant for today. We're gonna go to Alex in Dallas, who wants to talk about what? Your What's your topic? I don't have a topic.
Oh, yeah. How are y'all doing?
Good. What's up?
So I just wanted to talk about the utility of religion. So I'm religious. I consider myself religious. I am Hindu.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to say, like, I think a lot of your criticisms that you have of religion tend to be of like a very specific, like Abrahamic religions that I believe are dogmatic. I used to be an atheist, so I have like I know, and I have like criticisms myself of like dogmatic religions, of like cult-like doctrines. I think you can draw a lot of parallels between Abrahamic religions and New Age cults such as Scientology. And like, yeah, I guess that can exist when it's practiced a specific way. But I just wanted to know that, like, I just want to at least bring up a point that I think religion does have a lot of utility for society. And so, like, yeah, I just want to get into that discussion.
Yeah, if it's okay, I would just like to say that I've said before that liberal religions tend to be religions that people use in order to support community and family, right? So that's when a person that's a liberal religious person generally looks at religion as something that they can incorporate as one more tool to support their community and family goals, right? So it's just like when you take your kids to soccer because Tammy is got a soccer game tomorrow and we're all going to go and we'll take a picnic and we'll have fun and we'll cheer on Tammy and support Tammy. And it's a way that our family brings the family together. And when we go down to our local church and we go to church, we're really just there because I want to teach my kids about charity and we're going to do the food pantry and we're going to listen to stories about civic mindedness and how to be a good person and love everybody, and that's kind of what our church is about. And those people, if their child grows up and says, I'm an atheist, they're like, okay, what else? And so then you've got, though, like you're saying, right, there's these other dogmatic churches, and I'm not going to harp on that because I know that's not the topic of your call, but those are the more harmful aspects of religion that we see where, for example, I call that the church using the family, right? So in the liberal tradition, the family uses the church as a support, but in these conservative religions, what you see is the church using the families to propagate the religion and to support the religion, right? So when that happens, what happens is we all go to church, not because it's like a good family thing. That's what they'll say, right? And they'll say, this is supports our family, and this is so positive, and it's all rainbows and flowers until... What? Until Tammy says, I'm an atheist, right? And all of a sudden, you're also not my daughter anymore. Goodbye. Get out of this house. I don't want you to talk to your younger siblings about it. Or I'm going to force you to go to church because I don't care what you believe as my child. This is more important than anything. And you're not going to stop going to church while you live in my house. And you see what I'm saying? So in one instance, the religion kind of controls everything. And in another instance, the religion is used as a tool. And I do not disagree with you that both of those things exist concurrently and can be uses of religion. So I think we may be on the same page to some degree.
Yeah. I do think that, it's all sunshine and rainbows until Tammy decides to leave. And I think part of the reason why I think you see this beautiful community suddenly turn very antagonistic is, in a lot of ways, they find it to be like this perfect sunshines and rainbows type of culture. And then as soon as someone disagrees with it, they feel like it's falling apart. And I think that's when you see the viciousness arise out of the community. It's like, oh my God, like, because they feel like, oh my God, our culture is falling apart. What I believe to be so helpful to me, which is like, guided my spirituality, which guided my happiness, which guided my purpose in life, is suddenly falling apart. And therefore I need to act in this antagonistic way and like throw you out of the house.
Yeah, but there's other families where it's just like, okay, it's your choice. And if you want to be a Buddhist, that's fine. We're totally cool with it. Can we come see the temple with you? It just depends on the people. But at the same time, someone described it one time as I heard Jeff D describe it this way, but I don't know if this is original to him. But I just want to say that's where I got it, right? So one day Jeff described this as a gun that can shoot both real bullets and blanks, right? So basically he's saying religion is there and you can pull the trigger and nobody gets hurt, or you could pull the trigger and people get hurt. And it's a tool that has immense power. right? I mean, when people get hurt because of religion, they get badly hurt. When people are helped by it, a lot of times they think they're like very, very greatly helped, right? Like they'll call up and say, it changed my life. And other people will say, it got my family killed, right? So this is an immensely powerful tool.
Sure. Right. I agree. So the first question I want to ask you guys, I know you guys are left. I just want to know the extent of your left-wing beliefs of what would you, if you were to describe your political views, what would you say? Are you like Hillary Clinton left, or Bernie Sanders left, or perhaps left of that?
Well, I don't know. Ask me like a couple issues that you think would be telling, and I'll tell you if I have opinions on them. Maybe that'll help you tell me what you think, because I don't.
Sure.
I have no.
Sure. What do you think that capitalist structures should maintain or be? Do you think like the means of production should be owned by a society, or do you think private ownership is a good thing to an extent? If you're
okay. So for me, ultimately, I think that society has the right to choose its economic model, and that we can make it work in most ways. I generally, personally, am not huge on capitalism, and I personally don't like competition.
Yeah, capitalism is responsible for the earth being pillaged, and so it's inherently not working.
But if we're gonna choose it, right? Like if a social group that I'm in says we're gonna use this system fully or partially or whatever, I'm not going to. My whole thing would be, well, let's try to use it like you say, it's a powerful tool, right? Your economy and your economic model is a powerful tool, and if you're going to use any economic model, you're going to have to really look at it and say, are we going to use this to abuse people, or are we going to use this to support people? I think that you could. It gets hard in my mind. It kind of gets harder with capitalism. I believe in like teamwork and working together. I've never, even since I was a child, never liked the idea that I would gain from somebody else losing. I've never liked that feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's super funny that like you have a lot of right-wing Christians who are so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So. Okay, my phone made a weird noise. Okay, so, I think it's really funny that you have like a lot of right-wing Christians, and even in India, you have a lot of right-wing Hindus, and you would think that the goal of Christianity is to like help everybody, and for Hinduism, like all life is sacred, and you want to help the trees and plants because they also contain the same souls that are in humans, and we're all one. That's like Hindu theology, and like it's so funny that you have these people lie about science, right? About like global warming.
Well, it's funny. Can I interrupt you for a minute? Because we so rarely get to talk about anything other than like Christianity. Now and then we might get a Muslim call or whatever, but you rarely get like a Hindu. And so I've always thought that was interesting that, the Hindu religion has this idea of everything has this like spark of life, this soul, this divinity within it. And then at the same time, it's the same religion that gave us like this caste system with the untouchables and also sati, right? And so I look at things like that and I just think, how did this brutality and this horrors, right? But you have karma, right? You got this karma thing that kind of excuses whatever happens.
So, okay. Now at least you have some disagreements, so we can like talk about this. So, yes, caste system in today's world does not work, and Hinduism. So I think that Hinduism is like a living and breathing religion, that it's constantly changing, and that it started out with various people with the different philosophical and metaphysical beliefs of how the reality worked, right?
Sure.
And then it's just people having collective beliefs, and then, some debate each other, they have dialectics, they have arguments, and then they come to another truth. And it was just a bunch of people, and they have different gods. And so the Hinduism in and of itself is very, like, differentiated. And I think Hinduism wasn't a thing until you had, Mughal Muslims in the Sultanate, and then you had British colonial, and who were Muslim and Christian, and then they were like, oh, you guys are Hinduism. I think it's much like, Native Americans didn't call themselves Indians or whatever until someone else told them, hey, you guys are this. So then we're like, oh, yeah, we are Hindus, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally willing to accept for Hindu, as with just about every religion, they're not monolithic. I get it. I'm not saying that it's like homogenous in some way. I'm just saying that those ideas of the caste system and the idea of like the seti, the burning, if I'm pronouncing it right, those things were coming out of the same culture that was saying don't kill an insect. You know what I mean? It is kind of a dichotomy. Like, I wasn't really trying to argue as much as say, when you were talking about it's weird that they have these attitudes in conjunction with this life is sacred, it reminded me of the things that I object to, that I've also found to be
I agree.
at odds.
The reason I was making that point is just saying that and so Hindu, the point is that caste system at the time it was made. So the reason that karma and caste system, it exists to explain why. So there's that typical problem when you debate atheists, which is why is there evil in the world?
Yeah.
So every religion has to come up with its own explanation of why why do people suffer? Why is there evil in the world? And so I think Hinduism's reason is to say, we live multiple lives, and you probably did something bad in your previous life. That's why you suffer. But it also says in that same text that you shouldn't shame anyone, punish anybody for their previous life. And that it's still our spiritual, higher purpose to serve everybody.
But they're treated pretty bad.
But they don't is the thing. It doesn't matter what the words say.
No. Wait. You also have to create you have to separate a religion from the society that
you can't do that. I mean, I agree it's complex, but I think that religion affects society, and I think society affects religion, and I don't think they can be really separated. I think that you have to acknowledge they're kind of working together.
No, of course. But your criticisms have to be towards, it's not, you have a caste system, therefore, Hinduism, it's flawed. It is, we have a caste system, and we have a society it's a criticism on the society and their practice of a religion.
Okay, right, but I mean, at the same time, isn't there aren't the Brahmin the priest caste?
Yes, I am a Brahmin, and I think you guys get a lot of
Okay, so
it's an integrated
thing. America, right? I don't gain socioeconomically from being a Brahmin. It's just a cultural thing.
Wait a minute, but you're not an untouchable. So what do you mean you don't gain from that? Or are you just saying?
America, if I live in America.
No. Yeah, if you're saying that it's not as revered here as there, I agree. I might have misunderstood you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But So okay, so the point I wanted to make is I think that, and maybe this is a very romanticized understanding of Hinduism, but I would like to believe that thousands and thousands of years ago, India was a very, very progressive society, and that to be a quote unquote fundamentalist would be to be actually very, very progressive. And so because if you read ancient Hindu texts, there are a recognition of transgenders, there's a recognition of homosexuals, and while it doesn't say you have to treat these people well, we do have stories where we have third gendered, which call hijra. I think hijra is a more Arabic term. There's a Sanskrit term that I forget. But they're transgender hijras they have high membership in kingdoms. They have their advisors to the king, and so they're in these very respectable. And so we can draw the conclusion that obviously many of these people must have been.
So your religion gets something right. That doesn't mean.
And maybe it's a very romanticized understanding, and
yes, because I can tell you, I know somebody who is from India, and he's a physician. And he had to change his last name because his last name was indicative of his caste, and he changed it to a higher caste name. So believing that you gain no privilege from your name is...
I think he's saying that you gain privilege from the caste when you live in India, but that doesn't transfer
it's even
to
influencing
the U.S.
It even influenced the way this physician here in America...
Oh, wow, okay.
He was in the United States.
All right.
It influenced his standing in the medical community. So that might be an extreme thing.
I guess if it's recent, when there's a lot of Indian people now, yeah, maybe. But in what, and like, I don't know, like, who's he
Just
interacting
within the
with
last
at that?
couple years. Yeah. It was
Okay,
like,
maybe, I guess so. Another
And-
thing I wanted to talk about was, go ahead, just finish.
I think you should pay attention to that. The person who is in the shoes that you're saying, it's not a big deal, is saying it's a big deal, big enough that it has influenced his career, even though he has a medical degree. He has to change his name so that he has credibility in the medical community.
No, well, I know, I'm on board with eliminating the caste system. As a, like, I'm also very left-wing. I mean, I believe in equality of classes.
I don't think you're hearing me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're all on board with equality, but whether we acknowledge our own privilege is another thing. And I don't hear you acknowledging your privilege.
I will say, when I go to India, I am a privileged person, and maybe here I am privileged. Unless you see yourself being mistreated, I guess you wouldn't know the difference, right? So I could like see that maybe that certain things have been easier for me in the Indian community, being the Brahmin, perhaps.
I can almost guarantee you.
I know that for sure in India. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Like, I don't know, living in Texas, like, I deal with, like, the people I deal with are usually, like, you know, like, white people or Americans.
I was going to say, to be fair, if you're Hindu in Texas, somebody might think you're a Muslim and, like...
This is a brown person.
Yeah.
This is a brown person post 9/11. I mean, like, that was not...
I'm sure.
Being a brown person post 9/11 was,
I hear you.
You know, so, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure. I'm just saying within,
Right.
Okay.
All right. They did tell me when they gave me your call that you were somehow bumped last week. So we'll let you do one more topic, and then I got to move on to some other callers.
Sure. Also, I wanted to talk about God, or what you define God to be, because I think there could be a very secular definition of God.
We do this all the time, but I would rather not take this topic because, yes, there's all kinds of ways that people could define God, but, you know, generally there's already a secular label for it. And people, we usually responses use the secular term that's more accurate, and other.
Can we talk about liberation theology? It was like this. I mean, the idea that like you can use religion, doctrine to like perhaps create a better society politically. So I always believe in like the separation of church and state, but like you integrate your spirituality into your politics. So like when I say that like, you know, all life is like equal, that like all like you can use that to.
That doesn't require religion. That's secular humanism. I mean, doing all the right things does not require religion. Doing the right things politically, socially, I don't understand why.
I mean, if you're saying that you can further that aim by convincing people through a religion to do it, yes, you can. Like I said, it's a tool, and it's also a weapon that shoots blanks or shoots real bullets. I mean, that's kind of the scary thing. We were talking before the show about how many people call and say, my parents were very liberal. My mom was really liberal. And then when she started to get older, she started going to this church that was less liberal, and now I don't recognize my mom anymore, right? So even when you have somebody that's on the right track, the danger is that if somebody can convince them God wants to do something horrible and bigoted, then they become horrible and bigoted, even if they originally were like pretty open-minded, kind person. And that can happen too. So yes, you could use religion to manipulate people to do positive things, or you can use religion to manipulate people to do very evil things. It just depends partly on the person and partly on the person using the religion to persuade them.
Okay. I think, when you said the word secular humanism, I think that maybe. I just so when I talk to people on the road, so obviously my religious beliefs are very directed by my political views, and when I talk about things like global warming it's hard to get through to someone who, well, I think that at least my religion brings some sort of imperative to do the right thing, and I understand that I guess people who are atheists can use secular humanism as a philosophical. So I see my religion provides a philosophical, it provides me a philosophy on how to conduct my everyday life and my political beliefs. So I don't know. I think we more or less agree on things.
I think
right.
I don't know.
that what it all boils down to is we're social animals. I'm going to do this again. And you can do this too, Tracie, because I've heard you do it too.
I'll let you.
It's we're social animals, and there are rules to being a social animal, and those rules are going to come forward in some way, no matter what institution you're talking about, whether it's religion or secular humanism or whatever. It's best to be good to others because you may need something from them later.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah, I mean, even other social animals
how do you philosophically convince a CEO, a rich oil company billionaire who's profiting and he finds his pleasures through consumption, spending excess amount of money on his yachts, on his mansion, on his servants? How do you convince someone like that who owns a great deal of political societal power?
I guess the question is, how do you convince him using religion? Right?
Well,
I mean,
if they are religious.
No, if he's religious and he's okay doing what he's doing, how are you going to convince him that's not? If he thinks God's cool with it, how are you going to tell him God's not? Because we don't have a God to ask, right? So
Okay, that's a really good question.
If he's a secular humanist, at the very least, we can come at it from a place of reason and say, you did not come by this
here's
money.
the harm that your money's causing, or
because
whatever.
God gave it to you, right? And here's what you're doing.
But if he believes he has that divine right, I mean, what are you going to look at what's been done in the name of divine right?
Holy cats!
Right?
Right. No, of course. Yeah. Right. But I think that that's true. I don't know.
Hey, I'm going to let you go home and think about this a little bit because I've got to get some other callers on.
Yeah, sure.
But I did want to give you some time. You were bumped from last week, so we wanted to give you some special status here. So appreciate your call.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, so let's just hit like a couple more of those announcements that I promised. And we will say that, so April 20th, 2019, that was yesterday at AACon, Atheist Experience was filmed live, and that was in Cincinnati. Matt and Phil hosted, and we're going to air that directly after this show. So if you're one of those people that can't get enough TAE, you get more, right? So after this show, there's even more. Of course, they couldn't take callers. But they did do the show live at AA, and they took audience questions, and it was filmed there. And so it's going to be aired live for the first time right after this show. So you're in for a treat if you want to just stay on and watch. And if not, it's still going to be up later.
It'll be there.
If this is the only show you're watching tonight.
Always there.
And also Talk Heathen streamed live from AACon. That was today, actually. And their show is posted, and you can view that, too, the live AACon stream. So
they had Eli Bosnick and Arn Ra on it, I believe.
There you go.
Yeah.
So lots of people, because
good stuff.
It's the convention, and
I'm so jealous. Everybody's posting about it. I wish I was there.
I know this. Now I know how other people feel when I go to a conference and I post things like, "This is what it's like." You're seeing all the peeps, right? And and also look out for your April newsletter. That's released, and it should be in the mail, so you should be getting that soon.
Cool.
Oh, look, there it is. There's the newsletter.
It's so lovely.
That is gorgeous.
They do a really nice job.
No doubt. All right. So, you should be seeing that shortly. Okay, moving on. Let's see. So we have Renee in Little Rock, Arkansas, who is born-again Christian, and you're on with Claire and Tracie.
Hi, Claire, Tracie, and did I hear Jen also?
Well, Jen was supposed to be on today, but she had some problems that came up, so Claire was nice enough to come down and help us out and fill in.
Right.
Okay.
Hi, Renee.
I can't see you. I'm just on my phone. How are you?
Then you're missing the hair.
Yeah.
I know.
Missing the hair.
Maybe when I'm done, I'll get a chance to take a look at it. But my question was for Tracie.
Sure.
I was hoping that I'd get Matt, but I tried calling the show.
I apologize that I'm not Matt.
I mean, in addition to Tracie.
Okay. I'll try to be more aggressive.
Both of you. You don't have to do that. I don't miss him that much. I mean, I'd love to hear from him. But my question was about a video that I watched several times when Matt was referring to, I guess he called it his deconversion, and I'm calling it the deconversion.
I know a little bit about it. Warn you that it's tough when you have to speak for someone else, but if we're going to talk about Matt, that's cool. I will try to answer where I feel comfortable answering.
Well, that's why I said you also, because I didn't know if you have had your own deconversion. I think I heard you mention on one program that you were brought up or raised or went to Church of Christ.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And so I didn't seek out a video about your, I guess.
There probably wouldn't be one.
But, okay. So, well, can you give me a little bit of a background about what happened and what?
And it's also at the, the Atheist Community of Austin website. I have my deconversion story in text. And so you're welcome to read it there if you want the fuller version. I mean, basically, there were some things that occurred. The main thing I think that changed my head was reading about how the Bible was produced, right? So when I started looking up, I realized at a point that I was talking to a friend of mine in college, and he was also a theist, but he was not a Christian. And he brought up to me some things about the production of the Bible that just sounded a little weird. And then I started hearing about apocryphal texts from some of my other friends. And I finally just thought, none of this sounds like what I was taught in the Josh McDowell apologetics course. And I also started thinking, it seemed really weird to me. I don't know how familiar you are with Church of Christ, but it's kind of like just Rite of Baptist. And so they are like super Bible believing, right? Like they promote the church as like literal biblical church. And I thought, it's a little strange now that people are asking me about it, that I don't know anything about the history of the Bible. Like I know the Bible content stories, but I don't know anything about how this book came to exist. And that seemed real weird to me because I was going to a church that said this book is the Word of God. And I was like, shouldn't we be having lots of lessons on all about the Bible? Like learning everything about the Bible, like how it came to be, who collected the letters, how did they pick what went in and what didn't go in? And I realized I didn't know anything about that. And I thought it was real strange because it seemed like something the church person should know. And so because that hit me as really odd, I was like, I need to go see what's the story here. Because in all my years of going to church, I'd never had a class on that topic. And so I went and I started looking up how the Bible got put together. And the more I read, the more I was like, oh my, right? Like this is not what I expected at all. And by the time I got to the end of that story, I was just like, okay, so this is just a book. And it sort of wrecked the Bible for me as far as being the Word of God. I shook that pretty much after what I read. And then when I went to my pastor and I said, hey, just letting you know, I read some stuff and you might want to know about it. Because this is way different than what we're preaching, and we've never really studied it, so I don't know if you even know about it, but here's some stuff. And I've got these questions. I don't think this is the Word of God, and I don't think we should be saying that based on what I learned. And so I had meetings with the preacher, and at the end of it, when I was asking him, how do you know that these books are inspired? Like, how do you know this? Like, the books themselves don't even claim it. And so he went into one of the books, and he had this passage that he quoted that had something to do with inspiration. And I said, but what about Luke? I was like, Luke at the beginning of the book says he just did research. He says he went and he talked to people and that he, made a story based on the people that he talked to, and he was delivering that to somebody that had asked him to go and get that information. And I said, that's not, he's not saying he's inspired by God, so why do we say that Luke is inspired by God? And he goes, do you want me to show you that they're all claiming inspiration, like every single book in the Bible? And I said, well, yeah, that's what we're telling people. And he said, well, I can't do that. And I was like, well, then why are you telling this to people? And he said, because I have to believe that God had a hand in it. And so literally he was saying that the Bible was the foundation for his theology. And then when I said the Bible comes into question, so what happens to your theology? And he just says, well, now I go back to God and say that I just think God had to be involved, even though there's no Bible telling me that that's the case. And that made me realize that that was no better than the Catholics that we criticized from the pulpit when we said, why do they listen to the Pope? How do they know the Pope is behind God? Or, that God is behind the Pope, I guess. And I was like, we're pretty much doing the same thing. We're just saying God is behind this book, but the book doesn't say it. Luke doesn't say it. Why are we telling people that God inspired Luke? Luke doesn't say God inspired him. In fact, he says he did research. And so I felt like this wasn't okay. And I ended up finally leaving that church. Now, for 10 years, I still believed in God. I still went out and I thought, okay, to me, God existed. And so even if the church was wrong or even if Christianity wasn't right, it didn't matter. There was a God, and I was going to find that God. If that God wanted me to find that God, then I would find that God, and he would see that I was working really hard to get to the truth. Because I'd always been taught the truth is what mattered. And when I saw my church basically saying the truth wasn't that important, it was real disappointing for me. But I wasn't disappointed out of my belief, because I still believed, but I was real disappointed in my church, right? And the response that I got. And I just expected more integrity, I think, from a pastor that had preached to me about truth for so long. And everybody has their own story, but you were asking what hit me, and that's what hit me. And so then it was just 10 years of talking to different people about because I was looking for, then what is God? If God is not defined by the book that I've always thought defined God, then what does define God? I looked everywhere. And ultimately what I finally realized for myself, what I came to as far as a conclusion was, if there's a God, that God is everything. There's nothing that wouldn't be encompassed in that God. That God would be love. That God would be hate. That God would be light. That God would be dark. He would be good. He would be evil. There would be nothing outside of that God, because that God would be the largest thing that could be, and it would absorb and encompass everything. God would be everything. And then I stopped and I said, that's the universe. Right? I just described the universe. Yeah. And I was like, so is there something else? And if somebody wants to show me something else, I'm open to seeing something else. But that's that was my journey, and that's where I came to.
Okay. And I'm glad you said that's the universe, because you're right. And God is the creator of that universe. But I want to go back to would you ever say that you were born again? Would you ever say that you were saved? Yeah,
I was baptized. I was baptized into Jesus.
Well, okay. Oh, all right. I didn't write that one down. And you heard Ray Comfort was on. Oh, it's been a while back. I don't know if I'm sure you've heard that broadcast with Ray and Matt. And I'll say this, and you might be shocked for me to say this, but Ray Comfort is an unbeliever. And that might sound weird to a lot.
Does he assert that, or are you asserting that on his behalf?
I am asserting that because Ray Comfort teaches a false gospel. And when I've listened to probably as many of his podcasts as I have of the Atheist Experience over the last, 8-10 years. And Ray Comfort says things like, you need to turn from your sins, or you need to live in holiness, and all this bunk that Scripture doesn't dictate that you do in order to be saved. And it's as simple as believing.
And being baptized, right? He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. Yeah. He that believeth not shall be damned.
That baptism is not in water. We don't throw water after baptism. See, that's what the Church of Christ teaches, and it's not.
Okay, so you take it as some other type of baptism. Okay,
that's a spiritual baptism. Okay. Well, that's what it has to be, because what if someone believes in they're in outer space on a 2-year mission? How are they going to be baptized?
Well, there's a lot of people that you got to wait a minute. When I went to church, it was like, what happens if a 9-year-old dies?
Well, was he a believer? I mean, what if he wasn't baptized? Your water baptism.
No. What I'm saying is, what if you've got a kid that really isn't at an age where they can be accountable and they die?
Well, I don't know. That's got something to do with what they believe with God.
No, but what I'm saying is you have ages where you're not old enough to understand these theological concepts, and there's nothing in the Bible that says you're saved if you die before you understand them or before they're preached to you. What about people that have never been preached to?
Well, I don't know about those straw men.
No, they're not straw men. There's people that have never heard the gospel. And what you're saying is it can't be a water baptism because some people wouldn't be able to avail themselves of it. I'm saying there's people right now that can't avail themselves of Christianity because they live in situations where they've got no access to the word that you think is the word of God. So those people...
I have to believe that because the Bible says that the gospel will be preached to every creature. I have to believe that.
Right, but it's not true.
It's not true.
Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not true. Right, but it's not
You don't know that.
Yeah, I do.
How do you know that?
Because there are people
the gospel
on.
will be preached.
Yes, I know. No, it says that that it's already been. But the problem is there are places on this planet where it has not been preached.
Not yet.
Yes, right, not yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when those people die, what happens to them? Hello?
I'm still here. I'm not. I'm trying to ask you about your deconversion.
Right, but you said, wait a minute, you
there's such a
rejected
thing.
something by saying that, well, then a person wouldn't be able to be saved because they couldn't avail themselves of the water. And I'm saying there's a lot of, with your own theology, you've got situations where people wouldn't be saved because they couldn't avail themselves of the Word of God according to what you consider the Word of God. So they would be condemned and to hell as well because they didn't even have an option to make the choice. Does that mean you're wrong?
Because that means that because of the way that the world is, the created world, in our hearts, we know that there is a creator.
Right, but they wouldn't know it's Jesus.
If they seek, they might not know his name.
They might not know anything about him. They wouldn't be able to avail themselves of a resurrection they never heard of.
We don't know how God's going to reach those people.
Thank you. And you don't know what God would do with a person in space on a 2-year mission who didn't have water.
No, we don't. We also don't know.
They might go to hell even if they believe. They might go to hell even if they believe, and you don't know that's wrong.
Not if they're baptized in the Spirit.
That's because that's what you believe, and you believe it because there's no water on the spaceship, but you will sit there and say, when I point out people that can't do what you say they need to be saved, you say, well, God has to sort that out.
How much traveling have you done?
Very little.
Yeah, I think if you did some traveling, that you would see that there are lots of people in situations that you can't even imagine. And the notion that the Word and Jesus and God is going to get to them in the first place, or that they heard it and disregarded it.
Or that they heard the right version.
Or the right version, because, yes, this is kind of patently absurd.
Yeah, there are a lot of false gospels out there.
I think they're all false.
Like I said,
yeah.
I think they're all false. I think yours is false too.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
The one that we celebrate is not false.
I believe it is.
The Jesus who died on the cross for your sins, that is not the false gospel.
I don't believe that Jesus died on the cross for my sins.
Me neither.
I don't believe it.
Well,
nope.
He did.
No, he didn't.
Nope,
and he
didn't.
rose again.
No, he didn't.
He did, but you will find that out one day.
No, you'll find out you're wrong one day.
Being atheist means you never get to say, I told you so.
We can do this all day long. You can say, I'm right, and I can say, I'm right, but what is your evidence? How do we know you're right and I'm wrong?
Yeah, you're looking for the wrong thing.
No, I'm saying how you say one thing and I say the other. How do we tell who's right?
I'm right because the scriptures dictate that I need to believe, and that's what I do.
So you're right because a book, right? Well, I've read The God Delusion. I'm right because a book.
No, I'm right because that's what God says.
No, you're saying that's what God says, and I'm saying God didn't say it. Show me how you know this is true.
Because I read the Holy Bible.
How do you know the Bible is true? Is every book true?
No.
Okay, so what makes you think this book is true? Why do you believe this book is true?
God created the heavens and the earth.
Why do you believe this book is true?
Until you believe and get on this side.
I was on that side.
I
was on that side.
Yep.
So I was there. You tell me what I needed to know that I didn't know.
Well, that's the thing, because you weren't there.
Yes, I was.
Yes, we were. That's really offensive.
You cannot be separated from God if you actually were saved.
Well, then don't worry about me, because God still accepts me because I was with God, right? So that means I'm still saved.
If you were saved, then you are saved.
Okay. Well, then you've got nothing to worry about. I'll see you in heaven. Hey, I'm glad that atheists go to heaven as long as they used to be Christians.
There will be a lot of very bad people in heaven. Yes.
I believe it if there's a heaven.
Ooh, I don't like your God very much.
Oh, no, there will be a lot of very bad people in hell.
And there will be a lot of good people in hell.
There will, absolutely be.
So that is a messed up system, right? Where that ends up where good people are rewarded and evil people, where bad people are rewarded and evil people are condemned. I think that's
actually,
pathetic.
that's a very, very good God who says all you need to do to make it to heaven is believe in him.
So you don't have to be a decent human being. You just have to believe the right thing. You can be a crap human being,
right?
treat people like garbage, and believe the right thing, and you think that's morality.
I think that's what the scriptures say. That
Do you agree with it?
I believe that's what the scriptures say. I'm not advocating doing it.
So you don't advocate for the scriptures?
I think you will be a very bad witness if you do it, and that you're going to.
Do you disagree with what your God is doing? Do you think it's wrong?
As far as allowing people into heaven who only believe?
No, yeah, because
if
by rewarding wicked people and condemning evil people, you think you're worshiping the right God? What the hell would Satan be like?
By rewarding people who believe in him. He died on the cross. There's nothing more
to do. Hitler rewarded people who were on his side too, and condemned a lot of good people that weren't. It sounds like he is. Your God sounds a lot like Hitler. Torturing good people and rewarding the evil is what you're promoting as
that he died for you, and anyone that he died for, you need to believe in him.
Okay.
And that's all he asked you to do.
I think your religion is morally bankrupt. We're going on to another call.
Yeah.
Because I think Renee made her point. She outright said a religion that rewards the wicked and punishes the good is A-okay. Now, I'm not advocating for it, but I'm a follower. Mm-hmm. So... I'm a believer.
You're wrong.
But I'm thinking that made the point. And I hope people who are religious and who heard that call are appalled.
Well, I've been the atheist at the Baptist Bible study. I was the guest. They wanted me to come and talk to them about being atheist, and it was just that golden ticket. That's all that mattered to them. It didn't matter what they did or how they lived, and my jaw hit the floor. That was the first time I heard that. This was years ago.
And the thing is, they'll sit there and tell you that as an atheist, you have no basis for morality.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think that the person who's saying that eternal reward for evil and it's
a wee bit ironic.
Punishment for good might be the person who needs to go check their morality. Mm-hmm. Just saying.
A little bit.
All right, so we've got Jonathan in Casa, Grande, Arizona, and they've got you marked as a Christian, but no topic. You're on with Tracie and Claire.
Hi, Tracie. Hi, Claire.
Hey.
Hello.
Just real quick, because I was listening to the last call. I don't know how you guys do it, honestly.
Well, I didn't. I started screaming and hung up the phone. I'm not sure I did much different than a lot of folks would have done. Right?
Oh, yeah, I know. You guys have a tremendous amount of patience.
Yeah, and we won't saddle you with the last caller. You have your own beliefs, and you're calling to talk about what?
Yeah. There's several episodes that I've seen that you've kind of, when the topic of the cosmological argument, stuff like that comes up, and the whole universe from nothing and stuff like that. I've heard you say stuff like, what is nothing? Like there's no example of nothing. And I'm just curious, can you kind of give me an idea, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, to me, the way that nothing is used in that context is sort of illogical contradiction, right? So what happens to me is somebody says before all of this universe, there was nothing. And I don't know what that means because I don't know how nothing could be. Was means it was. What is a to-be state? And I don't think that it could be because being is existence. So if something existed, how could it be nothing? Mm-hmm. And that hangs me up.
Yeah. And it hangs me up too. But
then what I think is, if existence is necessary, if even nothing exists, then Doesn't that mean there's no need for a creator?
I'm sorry, could you ask that one more time? I'm not sure I understood.
If there's no such thing as non-existence, what needs to be created? We already have existence, right? I mean, if existence is all that could ever be, then what would be being created?
Honestly, I don't know.
I don't know either. That's what I'm saying. I'm not, this isn't like some people sometimes think I'm doing this as like some tricky, I'm being the clever atheist, but it's not. This is like, I don't get it. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And I don't, it might, I'm the first one to say, I mean, I've heard about the the physics of nothing and how there's these like wave states or whatever it is. And I'm sorry if I butchered it with that phrase. I don't know. I'm always, I'm not the physicist. And I know that they're saying there's like this something that they label nothing as a proprietary jargonistic thing. And I don't have an objection to that. But that's not what usually is being meant when people are having a theological discussion. They're saying like, you believe there was nothing. And I'm like, no, I can't even imagine nothing. I don't even, and it's not even a lack of, I can't imagine it, therefore it can't be possible. What I'm saying is that how would that be if it can't be or if it wasn't? That's the part that blows my mind.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, because I not to be like on that train where people are like, oh, it's just semantics or whatever, you're just playing word games or being dishonest or something like that. Like I believe you're sincere in what you're saying. But it's just the way that, like you said, like I don't, like nothing can be because let's like describing something that is, stuff like that.
Yeah, be wouldn't even make sense. Like you couldn't even use the be verbs. How could you?
Yeah.
You'd almost have to say everything wasn't. Right? I mean, you'd have to describe it in some kind of term like that. And even if you did, then if a person said, well, then what was? And like nothing was. And now you're back to the same. Yeah, it's like the loop, I mean, it's, I don't know.
Yeah, so it just kind of seemed like maybe saying like, say pre-Big Bang, there was nothing, and then saying, well, what does that mean or what is nothing? It always sounded to me like it was like kind of a question that didn't make sense to me saying, give me an example of nothing. Because wouldn't that mean you're giving me an example of something?
Yes,
So,
it would. Nothing
so
seems to be a contextual thing, right? Like if I say a bowl is empty, there's nothing in it. It just means that, it's got no contents as far as like what people would expect there to be in a bowl, right? I mean, that's as much meaningful context as I can wrap around nothing. And I think this might be why people, think about it and they're like, this is so mysterious, because it is a little mind-blowing. And if I was high right now, I'd be like freaking out. Like, So, yeah, to me, it's not just a semantic thing. It's like a logical contradiction thing. And it may be a problem with language, right? Like it could be just a problem with the language that can't wrap around something like that. I don't know.
But I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like,
but it's not. I'm not trying to do a gotcha thing. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just literally, I don't get it. And when people try to explain to me, when they try to explain it, I usually just see them basically finding, other ways of describing things that were that weren't, or that couldn't be because being would be. Right?
Something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something of a paradox. Like an example, like I kind of thought of, I think the other day, where I was thinking about it, was to ask for an example of nothing. To me, was kind of like the equivalent of saying, if somebody asked, well, what did Tom say? And then you said nothing, and someone said, well, give me an example of not saying anything. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, you could say, I asked him what he had for breakfast today, and he just sat there, didn't speak. I mean, I could describe Tom not saying anything, which would be the same as saying, saying nothing, because that's how we would understand it, as he did not say anything. But to me, if I say, everything wasn't, and I'm like, could that be?
Yeah, why wouldn't that fit the same way?
Because it's a totality, right? Like it's a there's no context in which there would be an expectation. So when you say there is, we've got everything, but what if everything wasn't? And then it, to me, raises the question, then what would be?
If there wasn't anything.
If everything wasn't. What?
Yeah. So if
What
there
it
wasn't
would.
anything, to ask what would there be, kind of, again, that like, it gives me a headache.
Yeah, me too. I mean, and that's the thing. I'm not saying that I'm brilliant or that this is clever, and it might be something really that simple that I'm not getting. I'm not, making.
No, I love analogies more than anyone probably, but I don't think there's any analogy that works here because no matter what you come up with, it's a something.
It's a
Or
contextual
like
thing.
Tom not saying anything.
Yeah.
I have seen people not say anything before. That's a real thing.
And like the bowl can be empty, and it's never. We could always make an argument that there is, technically always something
In there.
in that space. But
Even
it
if
has
the
to do with the
vacuum.
meaning of it, right? Like what we mean by it. Does it have apples? Does it have a screwdriver? Does it have, what's in the bowl? There's nothing in the bowl. Just means that it doesn't have contents in the sense of what people would expect. But that's not what we're saying when we say that there's no thing, right? No thing at all. And I don't know what to make of it. It's a little bit, beyond my ken personally, and that's all I can say. And if that's a fault, if that's a shortcoming of my ken's, I'm not saying that it couldn't be.
Yeah. And honestly, like if there is no God and there was a point in like time, or that's hard to say, but if there was at some point nothing, that would be remarkable. And like I can't remember where
I'd like to see that, nothing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I would like to see what the nothing looks
I read a
like.
quote sometime where, sorry, I have a cold.
That's all right.
I read a quote sometime somewhere. I can't remember who it was. Said that whether God exists or does not exist, they're equally amazing. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. I kind of agree with that.
I think it's a deepidity, but
I think it's a deepity too.
is it a deepity or a deepidity? I don't know.
I call it a deepity.
Anyway.
It's just it's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, was that it? Because we got a lot of calls lined up, or was there anything else? Was it just the nothing strangeness?
One more thing real quick.
Okay.
No, just one thing real quick. The special pleading fallacy, that doesn't necessarily, like, even if something is a special pleading like fallacy, it doesn't necessarily mean that what the fallacy is representing is necessarily true, right?
I don't even know what you just asked.
So to give an example of like someone saying, I believe that God is the cause of the universe. Well, what caused God? Well, nothing. He's timeless. Or uncaused. That would be special pleading, right?
Yeah, if you're going to say that the universe has to have a cause because nothing can be uncaused, and then say the thing that caused it was uncaused, that would be a problem, yes.
Okay. But it's like in that example, it's because it's a special pleading fallacy, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true, though, right?
Well, no, it means that it's faulty in that the reason you're saying a creator is needed is because there can't be uncaused things. And then you're saying there's an uncaused thing that caused the things. And so what's happening is you're creating a need for a creator by saying that things can't be uncaused, and then you're plugging in something that's uncaused. So there's something wrong. The original claim is either wrong because there are things that are uncaused, in which case you should say there are things that could be uncaused, and I think there is one that caused other things such as this universe.
Mm-hmm.
It strikes me as being like a magic trick where they're like, see?
But when you ask,
I've got something up my sleeve.
But when you ask, like, why do you think that a God
there.
created the universe? If your answer is because everything has to have a cause, then you have a problem. Or all things that begin to exist have to have a cause is kind of how they try to work around it. All things that begin to exist have a cause, and God never began to exist. And it's like, okay, well, then I got to figure out, did the universe always exist and it's just been changing? And it's just in this current incarnation, and we just don't know how to backtrack it to see what was before. I mean, I don't know. These are big physics questions.
If there is no God, though, and the universe did have a beginning, at the Big Bang,
Okay.
Is it unreasonable? Is it unreasonable, given the evidence that we have for like cosmology and stuff like that? Is it unreasonable to believe that the universe must have had a cause?
I think that in general, physicists would say that it does have a cause. This is kind of outside my range.
Yeah.
But I would say that generally the Big Bang is put forward as the cause, and usually there's a good essay. I don't know if it's still timely, but it was written by Stephen Hawking called what is it? The universe. It's about time in the universe, and I'm trying to think of what it was. Beginning of time, maybe. Let me just Google this real quickly.
Yeah. If you've seen Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos series, I can't remember which episode it's in, but he covers this quite brilliantly. I feel...
No, I haven't. I'll definitely look for that. Though.
Yeah, do, because it's the first time that I ever felt close to understanding infinity, which is a bizarre thing, the way that it was presented.
Okay. Here it is. It's called The Beginning of Time. It was written by Stephen Hawking, and it was written with lay people in mind. It was helpful to me, and the part that he talks about the beginnings of the universe, he basically just says that because there's not a capacity to look past Big Bang into the past, that you can't, you might as well just consider it a blank page, right? Like there's nothing there to consider. And until there is, it's a blank page, and then we have the start of our universe. So he's not really speculating in that lecture about what happened prior to the start of this universe. He's saying that because he has no good information about that time, there is no point to speculation. And so you might as well just talk about what you can talk about and leave the speculation to a time when we have more information, if that ever happens.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to look at it.
I mean, I kind of am like, if I don't have information, let me go, worry about things I do have information about.
Yeah.
I mean, when you don't.
Tracie,
Yeah, good. We're good.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys talking with me. I have watched you guys for well over 10 years, and I love watching you guys. You guys have the best discussions, and we have some kooky people who believe stuff that we believe, and I love watching you guys talk to them. And oh my God, I'm sorry. Can I just say like one more thing real quick, and I'll jump right off.
Real quick.
Okay. I don't know how long it's been since he's called in. I don't know. I haven't seen anything recently. The guy who called himself like Mark and Andrew, and I think Matthew.
Oh yeah.
Promoting.
Yeah, that was.
Oh
painful.
My gosh. How it's like people who believe the stuff that I believe, they have some kooky reasons for believing it, and honestly, I do too. Probably. I don't want to say like I'm not one of them, because I'm sure I am. But my God, you guys have just the best way of handling people who quite obviously have the most ridiculous reasons for believing what they do.
Well, thanks very much. And with that, we're going to let you go. We're going to move on now to...
Did you see in the news, I think it was really recently, just a few days ago, astronomers have spotted the universe's first molecule. Did you see that?
No, go for it.
Brain injury last year. Still hard for me to read things that have a lot of complicated stuff. But the universe's very first molecule, thought to be created after the Big Bang, has been detected in space for the first time. Helium hydride, a combination of helium and hydrogen, was spotted some 3,000 light years from Earth by an instrument aboard the Airborne Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy, or SOFIA. A telescope built into a converted 747 jet that flies above the opaque parts of Earth's atmosphere. So this is thought of as the mark of the dawn of chemistry.
Wow.
So yeah, I need to read some more about that, but talk about your amazing finding and
that is pretty amazing.
Pushing the boundaries of what you ever thought could be known.
And I also wanted to say, I forgot to mention it, I think, that, kind of a sad day for Sri Lanka.
Oh,
now that you're doing the news item, it reminded me. So just kind of a shout out, because I know, a lot of people like to post their joke memes and stuff on, Easter, especially on atheist pages. I see lots of funny stuff. I think last year I posted like a rabbit trying to have sex with a chicken, and it's like, here's how Easter eggs are made. And everybody has their thing that they're posting. And today was a really, really horrific Easter in Sri Lanka. So hearts go out to the folks there. There was a coordinated mass of bombings that resulted in the deaths of over 200 people and dozens of people sent to a hospital, and they expect the toll to rise. Apparently, it would hit hotels, hit churches. It was not a good thing. So,
Right.
really, really, horrible situation, and just want to say that's the wrong way to handle your grievances.
To be sure.
All right. And so we will move on. We're going to go to, this is Jonah in New York. You are theistic, a Christian, and you believe in the Bible. And you're on with Tracie and Claire.
Hello. I just wanted to say I really appreciate your discussions on the channel.
Thank you.
It's really awesome. You're welcome. So I wanted to call because to ask you guys on your, like, how can you believe in evolution if there's so many holes in it?
What makes you think there's so many holes in it?
Well, like, the fact that you can't, like they can sort of see correlations between species, but you can't get, like, bacteria to a species, you see?
Oh, golly. Okay, so holes in evolution, it's evolution, the theory of evolution by natural selection is just one of several ways that evolution is known to, or is theorized to be happening. And as far as the word theory, I hope you know that the word theory means something different in science than it does in lay language. It means a
I just want to say, I want to interrupt for a moment and just say, Jonah, you called on the right day. Because we have Claire on, who definitely can address this.
Awesome.
Yeah, disclaimer, still working with the brain injury, so words can sometimes be tripping for me.
Oh, yeah, it's all right.
Okay, so the natural selection, the theory of natural selection, evolution by natural selection, I'm so sorry, is the one that most people know the most about. And I think that's what you're calling about mostly, probably, right? The one that Darwin proposed? Right. Okay, so you say there are lots of holes. And the thing about Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection is that it has tremendous predictive value. Any theory worth its salt is going to have predictive value. The theory of gravity is that this should fall, and it has predictive value, so it happens. When we look at anything in science where we should find something if evolution is true, every single time it has been true. And I can give you a very good example of it for you to look up. I don't remember the specifics, but not too long ago, there was the fossil record showing organisms that had 4 legs that swam and organisms that had 4 legs that could walk on land. And the transition organism between the two was not known. But we had this time and this time, so we knew that the organism had to be somewhere in this time. And what you do is you have rocks that are this old and this old. And then you look for rocks that are this old, that are going to be exposed and easy to excavate. And you go there and you predict that you will find an organism that is somewhere between here and here. And scientists did this like they do whenever they do evolutionary research. They went and they found the organism. It was there. The amazing predictive value of this theory, there is more evidence for evolution than there is for gravity, if you look at all of the publications that are out there. And that organism's name is Tiktaalik. And you can look it up. And this happens anytime we have this gap that you're talking about, and we know where to look, and we have that place available to look, we find it.
Right, and just to say, that's the theory. You're talking about a theory of evolution by natural selection. Mm-hmm. There's also artificial selection.
Well, that's something that everybody has experience with.
Right,
because of dogs.
But it also is basically employing evolution in order to produce like you say, predicted outcomes.
Yeah.
I want this animal that looks like, especially dog breeders, right? Like I want something between this and this.
Yeah.
And I start breeding, and then I change literally and create a new breed based on these other two breeds.
Yeah.
Now, I know that usually the Christian response is, well, that's still a dog. But the point is, we're using the theory of evolution to use artificial selection to try and create things because we do know that evolution works.
When you look at a wolf and it hunts, there is a series of behaviors that a wolf goes through before it actually eats the thing that it is hunting. And every single one of those things is a behavior that's coded in its DNA. You can take any wolf and throw it out there and it will know how to hunt. It doesn't need lessons in it. It may have to fine-tune it by learning from the other wolves because it's a social animal, but if you do that with a non-social animal like a fox or a bear, they don't need lessons. Okay, so if you take that wolf and you want an animal that will pursue and catch but not hurt the thing and bring it back, each of those behaviors is a discrete behavior. And you can breed a dog to do exactly that, and that's called a golden retriever. The golden retriever knows to go get the thing, it will pick it up, but it does not deliver the bite that will kill the organism because you want a dog with a soft mouth, right? And then it knows to bring it back home to you, bring it to you. That's in its genes. A Labrador retriever will fetch until its heart explodes because it's in its genes. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying between those, but I meant like the gap between bacteria and say the lizard, you know?
Yeah,
because,
that's
you can't.
Yeah, I that right there means that all that says is that human beings have a really hard time grasping time and how much time it takes for things to happen. This is not happening over a few hundred years or 1,000 years. Hell, I personally have a hard time comprehending 100 years. I can't. I haven't lived 100 years. But thousands, millions, and billions of years, if you have generations that are occurring over that amount of time and with gradual change, and we see that in the fossil record. It's not like we're talking about this and there's just like, well, we don't have anything to prove it. If you look at the fossil record, it starts with single cellular organisms and works its way up through to present time. It's no mystery that it took a hell of a long time and a lot of reproduction and a lot of generations. And so you have the branching where organisms diverge from one another and you get different species. Is that what your concern is?
I would like to plug, I'd like to plug a video series that might be useful. Yeah. It's very dated, but it's still good.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you.
I have actually watched this, and even though I had a handle on the concepts, watching the demonstrations really helped me wrap my brain around it better. So there's a video series. It's actually fun to watch. And I'm going to say it's a video series by Richard Dawkins, but it's before Dawkins was ever involved in atheist stuff. So it's pure just biological. There's no religious aspect to it. So I'm not sending you somewhere where you're going to get, a bunch of atheist stuff. This is just when he was young, early in his career, purely doing biology, and it's called Waking Up in the Universe, Growing Up in the Universe. If you Google that, you'll get like episode 1. I forget how many episodes there are. It's not like huge, right? There wouldn't be like more than half a dozen. But it's really fun to watch. And he does a lot of audience interaction and demonstrations and things that really help you kind of visualize what he's talking about. And I recommend checking that out. And then after that, if you still have questions or you still have trouble understanding those concepts, maybe ask about it. But I think it will help you look at it and say, wow, at least I understand what they're saying now.
Right. I mean, I understand like the idea of it, but the idea that you have so many systems in your body. You can't have like a blood system. No,
I get what you're saying. Believe me, I'm telling you that this video series addresses that, right? So it shows you how something progresses and the logic behind how the genes work to actually change again and again and again, and how that results in more complex things from less complex things.
Yeah.
It's it's something you can, I understand exactly what you're saying. You're like, yeah, I get the idea. I got the idea too. I'm saying when I saw the examples that he used, it was extremely helpful to me. Now, you might watch it and say, yeah, I watched it. It wasn't helpful. But I would say give it at least a watch and then see if any light bulbs come on, because it might be that this resolves some of your questions.
Yeah, there's another series. Again, I'm going to mention Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos, because he also has some illustrations of evolution, including the evolution of the eye, which seems to be one of those things that Christians like to point out as being impossible, but it's quite possible, because eyes have evolved somewhere between 40 and 50 times. It's seeing light and using that to your advantage is very good, and so lots of things have evolved.
Well, it's interesting. He uses like a combination lock example that's really interesting.
Yeah,
when I saw that, I was like, oh, I get what he's saying, you know, and it just became a lot. Even as somebody that generally was okay with the theory, this really made me understand better, you know, how it like actually worked, not just the sort of cognitive comprehension of what they were saying.
You know, I've never done this before, but I'm going to recommend this to you and anybody else who is wondering about evolution. Go to the community college and take an introductory course on biology. You need to learn just the basics.
Or you can probably do it. I bet you there's a lot of online universities that offer free courses where you can do it.
Yeah, go in and learn about DNA and how inheritance happens, and how much a single, I mean, I'm not, even less than a gene, but I'm going to say, Jane, even a single gene changing can influence the way an organism lives or doesn't live. There's a lot to learn there. It's not like I can't compete with religion, because religion just says, oh, and that's the answer. When it comes to understanding evolution, there's a lot to it. And I've talked on the show before, and I have to simplify it, and people get frustrated because I oversimplify. But even so, people still say that they can get lost in the weeds. There are a lot of details to it. Bottom line is, for those who have studied it, there's no question, and it makes all the sense, and everything makes sense in the light of evolution.
And I will say, you know, and this is not, like, a lot of times I hammer people when they call in with a question that's science-based. This is a great day because Claire understands evolution, you know, more than any of the hosts you probably could talk to. But for that recommendation about going and, you know, looking up a class, that's fantastic. It would take you, like, no time at all to go find, like, one of those free university sites and get that. And what I want to say is, a lot of times one of the criticisms I offer is, why are you calling an atheist show to ask about biology? But in this case, I'm going to say this is a great example of somebody calling with a question of something that legitimately, you know, they're a little bit confused about or they need more information on. And we were able to kind of say, hey, there's actually expert data that people can easily avail themselves of, not just like the old series that I recommended, but like you're saying, you could get a current online course free from universities that offer them on introductory biology. And that really, I'm going to encourage this not just for you, Jonah, but for anybody. If you have questions about any field of science or any field, like any questions about history or periods in history, go and just get that answer from experts in the field. Don't be afraid to look it up or to ask, or, you know, if it's real specific like what you're saying and you can't find it on a Google search, then yeah, just go ahead and sit down and take a course for a few weeks.
Yeah, because the people who teach those things, there's support, and they will help you understand things if you have trouble with it. And if you've spent years and years and years studying your religion, and at some level your religion wants to say that evolution isn't correct, I think you owe it to yourself to go take a semester course, or online, I'm sure it's much shorter, course, so that you actually know what you're talking about. And
or
I don't
at least,
mean that,
or at least know what they're talking about, right?
Yeah,
like hear it from them and see if you still have issues with it.
Right.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. There's but there's just things that like not only like theological. Theologically, it doesn't make sense, but like scientifically as well, that like I have not gotten fulfillment from my answers. Like, how can an eye develop without knowing that there is light to see, or know there's certain colors?
Right.
Well, that's the natural selection.
That's the
part.
natural selection part. If you look at organisms that are very, very primitive, maybe multicellular, and if having something that perceives light is not actually that complicated, and this is why I think you should watch Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he starts at the very beginning. If you have an organism that is able to photosynthesize or perceive light, it's going to have an advantage. And if that ability to perceive light gets passed on, then there will be more of them, and then you have a greater variety of organisms that are seeing light, and you get the selection of the ones that see it best go up, and it's a cumulative thing.
Yeah, and specifically too on this planet, light, as far as like evolutionary models, would correlate to the sun, right? Sunlight generally, or reflected sunlight in some fashion. And so when you're dealing with sunlight, there is so much that goes with that, right? So you'll have, for example, certain other animals that are only out in the day. Certain animals that are only out at night. Certain areas where animals will converge on light or shade based on, like because of heat, not just because. So light is also associated with radiation, with heat. It's not just brightness, right? So even if you have like the capacity to start perceiving warmth, which is something that, things would gravitate to because it's hostile when you get outside of areas that are certain temperatures, right? And light is going to correspond to that as well, like tropic zones versus the polar caps. So it's like a lot of variations of things that could get you on the path to starting toward light perception. Might be something like heat, or might be something like prey being like just going towards something that you eat that is like attracted to the light or attracted to the dark.
Yeah. But there would be no sense of like advanced, like, say you already got like the needs of living, there would be no need to progress because
no.
There's an advantage. It's not well, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a need, it's just an advantage. So all it takes is like one thing that has this like weird leaning towards something, and suddenly it has an advantage. And once you have that advantage and you start to breed, just like I was talking about the artificial selection, that's when your genes start to get passed on, and now this has more and more chance of getting passed on, and more chance of getting passed on. And as long as it remains an advantage, which it may not, there could be a change in the weather, there could be a change that makes it a disadvantage at some point. But as long as it continues to offer you even slight advantages, it can begin to become a greater advantage. And then it can also begin that somebody, as you're breeding for this thing, one of those things has it a little more strongly than everybody else, right? Because it's always this bell curve where you've got things that don't have this, things that do have a lot of it, and then you've got things in the middle that have different degrees of it. So if you have a breeding population that starts being sensitive towards slight variations in light, it's not going to be long before you get something that has a little more like a capacity toward light, and then that thing starts to be the thing that breeds. So.
And then you have this group of organisms, some of them sensitive to light, some of them not, and then the tectonic plates start moving and they get separated, and somehow some of them are in cooler water and some of them are in hotter water, and so the ones that can stand the hotter water evolve to be able to handle the hot water. Some of them maybe, and on the cool. So the mechanism by which organisms are made to speciate are many.
Well, also you can devolve, right? So there's animals that had vision.
Had vision and
that have been in situations where we've seen them breed to lose that. So, I mean, you could start losing your eyes based on breeding in situations where they become less of an advantage.
Right. There's no need to waste resources on that.
So, I mean, I like I say, I think it's a good idea for you to look at people who know what they're talking about. Claire knows what she's talking about, and I don't mean to imply that she doesn't, but this is a,
Right.
10 minutes on a phone call.
I can't do that
Isn't
much.
going to do justice. If you have questions that you're saying, hey, I've asked people about it, I'm not getting my question answered, I'm Googling, I'm not getting my question answered. It's like, well, then maybe do a deeper dive into the information. Like, go ahead and take yourself a course in Biology 101. Maybe take the Biology 102 if you still have questions. Just keep taking it. If you finally decide, like, man, I've taken a lot of biology courses and I understand what they're saying and I don't agree with it still, or I still have problems with it, at least then you'll have more context around it so that you will have a better chance of asking somebody the right question or going to the right location for that answer, like a specific type of biology that might answer that, like, somebody that deals with genetics or somebody that deals, with specifically fish or bacteria or whatever that would be. So the more you know, the better your odds of being able to ask a more specific question.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying go and look at biology and all your questions will be answered. Goodbye. I'm just saying that's the best path to see if your question can be answered.
And there are folks who are religious and understand that evolution is a fact and that the theory works in such and so a way.
Yeah, you definitely
So
can
it
still
doesn't-
you can still believe in
yeah.
a God and believe in evolution. There's plenty of people that do.
Right.
I mean, I believe in like evolution to like micro and compared to macro.
That's the
like,
time thing, though. That's what
separation
Claire is saying. Claire is saying that if you keep applying micro changes over long periods of time, that's a lot of
macro.
changes.
Yeah.
Right? That's like a huge amount of changes to something. So is it even what it used to be? No. And so it's just a time thing. How many micro changes create a macro change?
I keep saying this, but I understand the like concept. But what I mean is like, like how if we came from apes, like that was our most recent cousin or whatnot.
We are apes.
We are apes.
Oh, well, I mean, not like.
Why are they still there? Can I beat you to the question?
Well, no. What is?
Oh no, that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say, why did we lose hair just so we could, wear clothes? Why is it like a negative?
Wow, you really need to take the biology class. Like I'm gonna say, because we didn't do anything. We didn't lose hair so we could wear clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, but why aren't we gaining more hair?
Not that clothes aren't cool.
Because
I mean, some people are very hairy, right? There's actually a gene issue where some people are born with a great deal of hair. I mean, they were back a long time ago, to our shame, they were put in sideshows, but we still have this. There are people born with hair on their faces, and I don't mean like just a beard. I'm talking, like full hair. I mean, I'm not going to disparage anybody's looks, but it looks almost like movie tech, right? Like when you see it, these are people covered in what I would almost call fur, and full body. So we do still have that gene kicking around.
Yeah.
Right, but it's considered it's a negative.
Well, no, it's not negative or positive. It's kind of benign, but it's. I mean, look, like this is. You're talking about breeding advantages, and this is probably a look that is not super catching on, right? I mean, you're not going to see supermodels covered in hair. So I literally, if that became a thing, if people started finding that, like if that became the mode of social beauty, if we decided like that is a super cool look, and we started like finding those people very attractive, like breeding a lot, I imagine that we would see more of that gene.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I didn't say it was like negative, like putting them like people with that, with a lot of hair down. I was saying like they still have to wear clothes, so I imagine it gets very hot,
Well, wait a minute. There's areas of the world where people don't wear clothes. I mean, if this is just about clothes wearing, there are tribes on the planet. I in fact just posted a thing to Facebook about a tribe that Facebook gave me the slap for 3 days because there was penises in the National Geographic thumbnail that came with the article about the indigenous populations because they are naked and they run around naked because that's how they roll.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that, but they also don't have the hair, not deficiency, but hair over efficiency.
Right. They don't have, but what I'm saying is they also don't need to wear clothes. They're naked and they don't need clothes.
Oh, right. I was saying that the hairy man I think he's Italian. He was in the Guinness World Record book. He wore clothes. That's what I was.
Yeah, it's probably a function of where he lived.
Yeah, we're social animals.
Right? I mean, if it's the law that you wear clothing where you live, or it's the norm, then yes, I don't expect him to go naked just because he has a genetic difference that causes hair all over his body. I mean, you don't wear clothes because you've evolved to need to. You wear them because that's what your society expects. In fact, a lot of times it's like weird religious norms of modesty that drive clothing wearing. Definitely. Very few people. There's plenty of days where I don't have to wear clothes when you're talking about temperature here in Texas.
Yeah, if it weren't for social norms, clothes would be entirely a functional thing. And the tribes that you were probably posting about and the other tribes that live in
Amazon
tropicals
areas.
and hot places, they don't wear much clothes. It doesn't make sense to wear a lot of clothes.
Yeah.
But then they also have there are varying levels of melanin in people's skins that evolved to compensate for that sort of thing. And as we moved across over into what is now the New World, then they got less sun because there were more seasons. And I mean, it almost sounds to me like what you're saying is God wanted us to wear clothes, and so we don't have hair. I feel like there's some sort of something in there like that.
That's not exactly what I was saying. I was just pointing out that it was like we don't have the hair that like a lot of other mammals do.
But we do have hair. I mean, whales don't have hair. Whales don't have hair.
Yeah,
much hair. They have some.
I meant like land animals, like dogs, cats.
Naked mole rats don't have much hair.
A lot of things in the ocean don't have hair.
Yeah. Let's see, other things that are terrestrial, they don't have much hair. Well, we breed animals to have not much hair. Yeah. I'm not sure what your point is.
Yeah,
really.
I don't really understand the significance of the hair, not hair thing either.
Oh, because I was saying it because, like most apes, why would apes evolve to have less hair? Like generally,
why not?
If apes are still, because it doesn't exactly benefit.
I think this is again a question for go and research. I mean, I don't know what else to say. We could go through the list of every single question.
You're looking at it backwards, and a lot of this is what we call evolutionary. What is that? The field that's just mostly hogwash, like evolutionary psychology, where we have a fascination with breasts because it reminds Desmond Morris and all of his hogwash. It's just it is all just so stories, and it's not how evolution is studied. It's not, the questions that you're asking are not really evolutionary questions, the way they're posed. And so I think
the point is that we're out of the theological atheist mode here. We have gone into specific questions about why would this thing evolve this way, and why did this thing evolve that way? And that is really specific stuff that needs to go to biologists.
Take a class.
So we're going to go ahead and recommend that you look into that further. We're already past the hour. I have about 10 minutes left, and we have a couple more callers to hit. So we're going to go ahead and let you go, Jonah.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Jonah.
All right. We're going to hit, let's see, this one's been waiting the whole show. So RAO in Wyoming, deism with Wim, and you're on with Tracie and Clare.
Actually, this is going to be a little bit different of a call than my last couple. I really wanted to say that I appreciate what the ACA is doing for the separation of church and state mainly. And I didn't think you'd have many theist callers today, actually.
Okay. So what's on your mind?
Yeah.
Well, I was wanting to talk about being a non-Abrahamic basically in America and any society that's religiously governed. And I know Don had brought it up a lot last week about the Religious Tyranny Act. And that was the basis of my call for today.
I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't either. What is it that we're talking about? Like, specifically, what is it that you want to speak about?
Well,
what about the act?
I can't stand the fact that we are living in a country that basically guarantees us freedom from religion and then says that one group of people gets to control what religious freedom means.
I think we agree.
Oh, we agree. Next.
I know we agree, but I wanted to touch on the fact that I appreciate what you guys are doing to put that out there, and that you're making this a better place for a lot of people out there.
That is our goal.
Yeah. Let me talk, Godless Bitches, this Saturday coming up, we're going to have somebody from what's called the Texas Freedom Network talk about that very sort of thing, about separation of religion and government. And Texas Freedom Network does a lot of that work here in Texas, which is kind of the cradle of all sorts of ugliness. In fact, I worked with Texas Freedom Network pretty closely when I was working to fight back Don McElroy and all of his friends on evolution being taught in the school. So, yeah, tune into Godless Bitches, and we will be talking about that. Or actually, I'm not going to be on the show.
Well, a couple of the Texas legislation bills are going to be discussed during the show. Probably one of the ones is going to be one of the one Don talked about. I will say that, just like you're talking about Texas Freedom Network, we talk a lot about this stuff. Texas Freedom Network is actually in there fighting the fight.
That's what they do. They're
FYI,
amazing.
They're the ones doing the work. If it was just us talking, those bills would just go right through, right?
Kathy Miller, the woman who heads it up, is phenomenal. I have never seen such an energetic person. She can go and go and go, and her fight never gives out. Yeah. She's amazing.
But thanks for your call, and thanks for bringing up the legislation and giving us a chance. Giving us a chance to talk about that Godless Bitches and how we're going to have that on next time.
Always happy to talk about Godless Bitches.
So we're going to go ahead and let you go. We have two other callers and just, not even 10 minutes left. So thank you very much for your call.
All right. You all take care. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Yeah. Okay, and now we have Nikki in the UK who's on the fence. You have a fear of hell with two friends of other faith and afraid they will go to hell, and a grandmother has issues with religion, and you're on with Tracie and Claire.
Hi there, how are you doing?
Good. Hi, Nikki. Good.
Cool. My issue is from a young age, it was my grandmother, very religious, to the point of my grandfather and I used to sort of say her RM is very bad, which meant religious mania. The problem is that in doing that, she caused a massive problem for me by instilling the fear of God and hell. Mm-hmm. My father refused to have anything to do with the church, and we're talking Christianity. And I still now, I've dipped my finger back into theism and I've tried. I can't get how people actually understand this and do it when, according to Christianity, as I understand it, a loving God would send most of the planet to a hell that he made. My problem, it haunts me. And the why is that it wasn't only me as a child of 14 that she told me that because I couldn't resort the Lord's Prayer, etc., I was going to go to hell. It was my father. It was my friends. As I say, a Zoroastrian and a Jew. And
yeah, like everyone's going to hell. Got it. Yeah, totally.
And I think I'm like, it's very crazy that half of me thinks, I really want there to be something out there. But reading the Bible and all that sort of stuff, it's hideous.
Yes.
And then I spoke to people who were theists and said, look, help me out here. What about Elijah and the bears? And they're like, no. And, it's the cherry picking thing. And I'm now being accused of cherry picking the bad stuff.
Is anybody telling you that you're wrong about what you're cherry picking?
Yeah, well, yeah.
So what are they, do you think that what they're telling you as far as their rebuttals to you are valid?
No.
Okay.
But I don't know why I still have this, if it's real, and my grandmother, who's passed through it, and, it was quite horrific
Nikki.
As a child, I can't understand how to move on. And yes, the rebuttal is, well, can't you see that these, like slavery? And somebody said, oh, well, perhaps that's like the welfare state. And I'm like, what?
Okay, yeah.
No.
It's obvious to me that the logic of it is you found what makes sense and what doesn't. And I keep listening to that. The thing that I'm concerned about is your concern over hell and that sort of thing. That is a trauma. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's a trauma. And the fear that you have is going to be super limbic. It's going to be in the back of your brain, and it's not going to make any sense. It's going to be one of those things that you'll have to ferret out and work, I would guess, in counseling. There are techniques to help people get over traumas. There's like EMDR and that sort of thing. This is not an easy thing to get over. I am very close with people who were traumatized by the devil as children. It's not easy to just get rid of that via logic. There's too much in the back of your brain that's been planted there when you were a child that getting rid of is really difficult.
One thing I want to say that is just, I feel bad because I feel like what Claire is addressing is definitely the priority for your call. But I have a sideline thing that I want to mention, which is the difference between your call and Renee, right? So we have a Christian who called us up to say, hey, good people are going to be tortured forever, and that's totally cool. And wicked people are going to go to heaven and be rewarded, and that's totally cool too. And you're sitting here saying, a lot of good people I know will be burning in hell if this is true. And holy cow, how can that be possible? Because this is horrifying. Renee is so into it, she doesn't even see the horror that she is expressing. And I hope that when people see her call, they're able to see it because, she is just gone. And if anybody else watches her call and hears what she has to say, I hope they're watching it with their jaws on the floor and completely appalled and as appalled as you are when you come to understand what's going on.
I am, and as I said, I dipped my finger back into theism, and we're getting, as in my stupid responses from people who were as Christians, as I say, maybe from the egg. So I'm thinking, okay, you haven't been exposed to the stuff that I have, which again, as I agree with Claire, thank you. It is a class as what like psychiatry would probably call religious trauma.
Yeah,
but I'm almost feeling like a complete idiot because I went back to going, I really want there to be a God.
Here, Nikki, let me cut you off because I have a hard cutoff at 6:30, so I've got like 1 minute left.
Sorry.
No, it's okay because what I want you to do is go to our blog at Free Thought Blogs, right? /AXP. It's freethoughtblogs.com /AXP. If we could put that up on the screen, that would be helpful. Nikki, go there and post, because I want you to stay in touch with the show. And I would like you to go there and say that you are the Nikki caller from UK who called about your grandma and called about hell. And those people will be supportive. And believe me, I will be at the blog to make sure they're supportive.
Right.
But they are good people, all right? And I want you to do that. Definitely the AXP blog. Go there. When you post, the first time you post, it has to be moderated, so there will be a delay. Don't think you did anything wrong if you write your comment and you post and it doesn't show up immediately. It usually takes about a day or two, so that's fine. But yeah, please do that. Okay.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. Okay, so with that, we have wrapped the calls. I want to say thank you to our audience. Thank you to Claire.
Thank you, Tracie.
Thank you to the folks that stayed with us in the control room.
Yay.
And, it's
Thank
just
you,
awesome.
audience.
And with that, I think we've got pizza coming up.
Pizza.
So you think that you can tell us how to live our lives, never questioning the source from which your moral code derives. You think that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised. I wonder, what will it take for you to start opening your eyes?
All right. Holy shit.
All these people.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the Atheist Experience Live. We are here in Cincinnati, Ohio at the 2019 American Atheist Convention, where I'm told not too far from here, Ray Comfort and Ken Ham are having another convention. And I want to make this point before I say anything else. Isn't it cute that now that the nuns are not only the fastest growing religious segment in the United States, and the non-believers are the largest independent individual identity within this, to whatever extent that's true, that the Christians are now putting on entire conventions over Easter weekend to compete with the atheists down the road.
Yep.
We are live here. We are happy this is being recorded. It'll be broadcast or restreamed later, and probably this will be tomorrow's episode because most of us are here. And obviously we can't take phone calls, but I'm your host this week, Matt Delaney. Joining me this week, Mr. Phil Session.
Woo! Thanks for having me here. Yeah.
Eric already gave you like an amazing introduction, and I wasn't going to let him keep blowing me. We've got a show to do, and there's people out here who paid good money to listen to us blab for a while.
Yeah. So tomorrow for the main show, they're going to record a live show at our regular time at 4:30, and then this will be rebroadcast right after that happens. And so it's going to be a 2-for-1 deal for those that are in the online world. So
further proof that I know nothing about what's going on and just show up and talk. By the way, I'll also be at ShoeCon this year. And I'd like to announce that I'm starting my own fundraiser to raise money for an expedition to go and rescue Aaron's expedition in Africa next year. We have, I know Ben's out there possibly getting some more questions. We have questions coming in. Yes. We have 0 guests. We're not pulling any, but well, who knows? Somebody might show up at some. I sent a message to Ray Comfort.
Any responses for that?
This is true. I offered to go to their convention and let them question me and then have one of them come up here and have you guys do that too. And when that didn't get a response, I sent him a quick message to say, if you can get to the American Atheist Convention by 3, I'll be doing a live Atheist Experience. You would be a welcome guest to sit down and chat for a little bit. Okay. I did not get a reply.
That's a shocker there.
He's probably busy. I mean, they're doing a convention. They've got to have just loads of people.
And lots of bananas.
That they're selling ARC Park tickets and other bullshit to. Wow. But all right. Now, not all of these. You have stuff we have to go through first. See, you're in charge.
Oh yeah, there's I guess a few things, but I appreciate the intro by Eric on that side. But for those of you that don't know me as well, I've been on the show I guess for almost 3 years now. To be about 3 years this summer on the side as one of the rotating co-hosts. But I'm the vice president of the Atheist Community of Austin, and I handle all of the volunteers. I'm the community service individual there for the ACA. I coordinate Austin Atheists Helping the Homeless there in Austin, Texas, and I also am on the board and coordinate volunteer activities for Free Thinkers Association Central Texas down in San Antonio. So there's always a lot of volunteering going on. And as what mentioned, I'm not sure if anybody looked at the schedule. There's going to be a volunteer event tomorrow here at AACon. I think it starts at 1 p.m. on tomorrow. So for those of you that are still here, I'm super looking forward to that. Like, I made sure that I would be here for it because last year I had to leave slightly early so me and Tracie can actually drive back and be back in Texas at a reasonable time. So I'm looking forward to actually doing that because I love the volunteer and community service aspect. It's freaking awesome. So if you're going to be here, show up.
Yeah, we did this in PA at a convention, and it was legitimately one of the best parts of the convention. Everybody had a good time. You know, you're doing good. You're feeding 50,000 people or more. It's great.
Yeah, it's a wonderful project. So I'm super awesome. But I did post on my Facebook earlier this week on the Secular Student Alliance's Ask an Atheist Day. And I told a few people that, hey, I would read some of those questions. And so I'm going to read just a few questions on there before we actually get to the audience questions on here as well. But Roy, who's one of the volunteers for Austin AHH and Austin, says, how have your parents or family taken your atheism? So do you want to start there? Or?
Taking it from behind, I think is. So for those who saw a recent show, I had my 50th birthday at the end of March, and I got a letter from my mom. I'm not going to rehash what I said about it, but I think it was probably like a 20-minute rant about how I let them just be, they're hurt. And I understand this. And I got letters from people after the rant who really enjoyed it. And some people thought, well, you're just a callous ass who doesn't understand that your parents are just feeling sad that you're going to hell. Oh, if you think I don't understand that, you haven't been paying attention. But what I had to do is, after a decade of getting passive-aggressive messages and one-way communication, I just said, you know what? I'm happy to have a conversation with you if you want, in person or on the phone, but if you're going to write me another letter like this, I will not be accepting anything that comes in the mail from you at all. It'll all go directly in the trash. So if it's important, make it registered or something. So now I'm expecting to get like a registered birthday card next year. But I put my foot down and drew a line. And like what I didn't talk about on the show, because 2 days later, my mom sent me a text message. She'd had surgery on her tongue, and there'd been like a follow-up issue, and she thought she was going to have surgery again. She went and saw the doctor, and the doctor said, no, you don't have to have surgery again. So she sent me a text message that was, hey, I went to the doctor, praise the Lord, I don't have to have surgery. And I replied, I'll praise the scientists and the doctors, but I'm very happy that you don't have to have surgery. Yeah. And now they know that when they send me passive-aggressive Jesus shit, they get Matt from the show. And if they want to talk about something else, then they can talk to their son.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's...
Not that Matt from the show is dramatically different, but I was cutting my mom a lot of slack for a long time.
Yeah, my parents and family, it's definitely everyone knows if, for the folks that are on the Facebook world, I post a lot that's on there. It's always, some event that's going on, something community service-wise or something that's atheist-oriented. So everyone is aware of the issue. And what it kind of boiled down to is people just kind of didn't want to mention it. No, it's something that you didn't talk about. And so when we gather for family occasions, because I still do attend a lot of the major family functions, I'll travel up to where all the rest of my family is, and we'll do the big dinner, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the time to pray, so everybody joins hands and gathers around, all that kind of good stuff. And typically I just look around. I don't I don't bow my head. I used to bow my head. I actually used to close my eyes and just kind of not do anything, kind of playing the part. But now it's just like, I'm just going to look around. And so I see
who's looking back?
The little kids that are walking around, just kind of, looking around, not doing what they're quote unquote supposed to be doing. And so, but my mom, the conversations that I've had with her, we have conversations about it, and she will actually be the one to initialize these conversations. But she always says there's a point where she has to cut it off. So we're having a conversation.
When she's losing. Yes.
No, on her perspective, it's too much. It's too much. And so she's asked me about my activism and why am I an activist? And, why do you have to go out there with the label of atheism? And I was starting to go into some of that about the misconceptions that are out there and the knee-jerk reactions that people have to the word atheism. And, 10 minutes into the conversation, okay, that's it. And so for the rest of my visit there, we'll probably not broach the subject again. And so we've been doing these little pieces for the last couple of years as she asked about different topics, and we have those discussions. So that's the way we've kind of done it. But I still love my family. I still have a relationship with them. I still value that relationship. And, most people are respectful on that side. They know what it is that I do, but they also see a lot of the community service that's there that, generally eclipses most people's involvement in a lot of community service, and they applaud that and they think it's a wonderful thing. And so there's some common ground there, at least on that aspect, that we can still do good things even if I'm a dreaded atheist out there doing it. And so
you're a terrible human being, but we love you. This is the dichotomy that comes up over and over again, because I made it easier for my parents at one point, because I said, look, you can give me your testimony as often as you want. It's not going to change my mind. I want actual evidence. And the other thing is I'm better equipped to argue the Bible and the philosophical stuff than they will ever be or care to be. My mom knows pretty much nothing about the Old Testament. So it's kind of pointless to bring it up. And turns out she doesn't know all that much about the New Testament either. She just knows Jesus. And that is a particular mindset that it's not uncommon. Most believers don't know that much about the origins of their religion, their holy book. They may not even be able to be very confident about what they believe or why, and that's why these conversations are so uncomfortable. And there are exceptions to this. I mean, I debate a lot of kind of professional apologists, which is, isn't that weird? Like, I can understand why reason, science, and things like that need advocates, because reason and science don't do anything without advocates.
Sure.
Why would an all-powerful God need Ray Comfort to come tell me about it? I mean, how many people were at the rally out at the fountain yesterday? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a really nice person out there that I talked to for a minute, and she was spun up before I ever started talking. And all I wanted to do was ask her, let's give her a decent impression of how we can maybe have these conversations, which you'll find out more about after this is over when Anthony gets up to talk about street epistemology. But I was trying to make it clear, I'm not in any way saying you're wrong. I'm asking you, how can you demonstrate that you're right? Well, I am right. No. I'm asking you how you can demonstrate that. Well, what woke you up this morning? Your alarm clock didn't wake you up this morning. The Spirit of God woke you up this morning. And I'm like, actually, my phone woke me up this morning. But
your phone is the Spirit of God?
It is. I'm getting a label for it. And so all I would do is ask a question, which isn't always the way I go about it, but there's a lot of different ways to have these conversations.
Sure.
And so she grabs her cell phone and is trying to take a picture of my badge, and I held it up to make sure she could, get it as well as she could. And I kid you not, I'm not just saying this because it's funny as fuck, but she's pointing the camera at my face, and she's not answering any questions. She's just saying, I'm right. And then she goes, well, have you ever heard of Ray Comfort? And I said, yes, I have. He's called into my show. I've debated him on the radio. I've met the man in person. And the first trick in my magic act is all about Ray Comfort while Ray Comfort talks. What do you got? And that was a little, that kind of shortened the conversation.
I would say, did that end the conversation?
Yeah. I did not get asked if I was a good person.
Okay. Just missed that out. But
there's a question here. There's a question here from Jennifer B., which I cannot answer, but if you come up to me afterwards, I will explain to you why I can't answer it. Have you got the next one, or you want to do this one?
I'll go ahead and do this. So, go ahead.
How do I get the deep-rooted leftover dogma out of my heart and life? And then in parentheses it says, that's Christianity. How did you wash the Jesus poison out of your heart and life?
The Jesus poison. I guess for me, it was a much more gradual process. And, when I was in college and I was understanding that I no longer had a belief in this particular realm of Christianity. I was raised Baptist, and the other side was Free Church of God in Christ, but I didn't subscribe to that anymore because I saw it as there were too many hands in the pot when it came to what you actually should do and what the Bible says and how many times it's been rewritten and stuff like that. And so I kind of transitioned out by saying, I'm just going to do my own version of religion. So I became spiritual but non-religious, that lovely title. And I kind of just had church in my own way. I would listen to music at the house. I would kind of do my own thing. And I started looking at the world not through the lens of the doctrine that I grew up with, because I wasn't convinced by that anymore. And the people that I had spoke with about it, when I had questions and wanted to find out more, it wasn't satisfactory. And so my transition was more, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to kind of figure this out on my own versus trying to rely on this set of rules that, who the hell knows, put it in this book as to how I'm going to live my life. I'm going to figure it out for myself. And I've made mistakes, that's for sure. I've had stumbling blocks and things that I couldn't answer, I wasn't ready to answer, and had to do more research on several issues to kind of find the way I wanted to move forward. But it was kind of making the decision that I wanted to chart my own path. Even before I identified as an atheist, this was before that time. And it just kind of remained that way even after I identified as an atheist and learned what that was, that, we don't have any, supernatural guidance. We're in this ourselves. We're in this thing ourselves. So we need to figure out how we're going to push through. And so that's why I try to live my life by that. And that's how I kind of left that dogmatic, the rules and everything else. Thank you.
Yeah, there's various versions of this question that I've been asked over the years. I know atheists who've been atheists for 50 years and they still wake up with nightmares about a hell they were indoctrinated to believe in. And as soon as they wake up, they're like, oh, well, yes, on an intellectual level, I know that's not the case. So I'm over it and I'm on with my day. And the truth is, there's a bunch of little truths here. One is that quite often the things that you look at that you believed, that you were indoctrinated to believe, the dogma and the things that you're hanging on to, may not actually be a part of the religion at all. It may just be a part of a particular group within that religion that you were hanging out with. For example, if you're terrified of a notion of hell, well, as it turns out, Billy Graham and Fred Phelps both went to the same seminary and had a falling out. And it wasn't about whether or not God hates homosexuals. It was about whether or not hell is a real place. Because Fred Phelps believed that hell was a literal place people were going. And Billy Graham took more of an annihilation theory route, that when you're dead, you just die and that's the end, unless you believe in God, and then you get to keep living. And these are really subtle arguments that go on. One of my favorite debates that I've ever seen was between Matt Slick and Jesse. Oh, I apologize, Jesse, I'm not going to remember his name. But two Christians debating about the requirements of salvation, basically a Calvinist view and everything else. And I've said it before, my favorite part, Jesse would present a whole bunch of Bible verses and show why they agree with his point of view. And Matt would present a whole bunch of Bible verses and show why they agree with his point of view. And at no point did either of them say, that verse that you're citing is wrong and it means this, because they can't. So when I can't remember who said that religions poison you and then offer you the cure, and then my revision of that was that religions can convince you that you're poisoned when you're not, and then offer you the homeopathic remedy, because there's no there. Nothing I'm saying makes this any easier. For me, getting over a fear of hell was really easy. For others, it's not going to be. I just basically said, wow, I've spent zero time worrying about the hell of other religions. So clearly this is a result of indoctrination, and now I'm free to live my life. The thing to remember is that, yes, I understand you can be struggling with how to get over the leftover dogma and stuff that's kind of baggage in your life. And it's not just baggage about hell. It can be baggage about sex. It can be baggage about abortion. It can be baggage about all kinds of positions that your church and the people you surrounded you with specifically stuck into your brain. It's okay that you're having difficulty going through it. Anybody here had some difficulty getting rid of baggage related to Christianity? Anybody here still maybe dealing with some of it? None of you are alone. This is the reason that we're doing this. There's a reason that I don't just do this because I think I'm right and religious people are wrong. I do it because I recognize that there's real damage to being wrong. And not just in the sense of, oh, we're going to elect this person or poison the Supreme Court or go up against this. It's not all politics. It is about me hearing from a 15-year-old kid who's been kicked out of his house and disowned by his parents because he no longer believes and had the audacity to express this. It's about hearing from the 70-year-old that is dealing with cancer and terminal life issues, and their family is constantly coming with this barrage of stuff, and it brings up memories of how they were raised. And then there's this, well, what if I'm wrong? Well, what if I'm wrong? Well, oh my gosh, what if I did this? And how am I doing? It is abusive. It is emotional abuse. You are the victim here. And the thing to remember, because people say, aren't you mad at your parents for teaching you this and doing this to you? Aren't you mad at your preachers for doing this to you? No, because they're victims too. My parents sincerely believe and honestly thought that they were teaching me the right thing. My parents loved me. They weren't trying to do damage to me. They were doing the best they could, and they were wrong. The thing that I'm pissed at them about is not that they did this while they were convinced they were doing it was the right thing, but that they don't stop doing it when we have a conversation where they recognize either they are wrong or I can't have this conversation anymore because it will force me to recognize that I'm wrong. That's the thing I'm pissed about, and it's not entirely their fault. Because religions have built-in defensive mechanisms. Don't doubt, don't question. Satan's going to come after you. Matter of fact, if you're doing right by the Lord, your life might actually be miserable. People might not like you. You say stuff about Jesus and you're persecuted. That just means you're doing right by God. Well, maybe it means you're an asshole. Maybe people are tired of you doing this. It's going to take time, and the best things you can do, one of them you've already done because you're here, and surrounding yourself with other people who are going through the same things you're going through and have been through the same things you're going through is probably one of the best. I'm not a psychologist, so don't take my advice, but there's probably a couple here that will verify this. Maybe one of the best things you can do to get out from underneath the indoctrination mindset and start to take ownership and value your own life.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that. As Eric and Jamie were mentioning in the last, and this is a community, and you're not alone in the struggles that you're going with, that baggage that's there. There's a lot of people around you that have had something similar to that. Everyone has their own unique experience, but they may hover around the same type of experience. And so sharing that with others and getting different perspectives from others that have also gone through that may hopefully help you get through what you're going through, and so that you can come out the other side and find a little more happiness in your life. And so, it's community. It's what it's there for. That's what we do. So,
all right, you got the next one?
I will. This is from Jackie down in San Antonio. She specifically referenced it as me being gay and atheist, but she...
Wait, you're an atheist?
Oh, my God. Didn't you know? What? But it's what advice would you give others in your shoes? And I'm just going to broaden it just in general. Just as coming out, what advice would you give others about it? And is there anything that you would do differently in hindsight in the way that you came out? And I guess I'll go ahead and start.
Yes.
Like the way that I came out, I initially came out as gay before I came out as atheist. And I had heard the stories. I had, heard of the Trevor Project and a lot of the people that call there, and a lot of the depression that can go on from it if you're rejected, and a lot of the stigma that came with it. And so rather than just coming out, I knew I was gay it was a while. it was a while, but I wanted to, get my financial independence, because I was like, well, what if I get cut off? What if I don't have insurance? What if I don't have a ride to go to work? Because I was still dependent on my parents to be able to drive me to another city in order to go to my second job, for example. And, it was all of these concerns about what if. And so I took a long time to do that. I, bought a cheap cash car because I needed to get something, got some insurance, and finally started to feel secure in my life that if the worst came to worst, I could handle this. I had a network of friends that could support me. I had, my own family that I had made. And, I would hope that no one else, and I hope that it's definitely gotten better for people that are more recently coming out, that they don't have to have such concern, but there still are stories that are out there. But I'm not sure if I would do anything differently, either coming out as gay or coming out as atheist. And atheist, it was really by Facebook, by means of Facebook, where people started to see, hey, I'm posting this, and I'm like, well, they're going to find out at some point. I'm not going to just sit there and hide it, and we'll just see. So some people blocked me, Some people didn't want to see my timeline. There was too many rainbows, too many atheist emblems coming up on my timeline. So it's like, no, we don't want to see that. I still love you, but I don't want to see that. That type of thing. And so I wouldn't change anything about the way that I came out, because it's always unique to the person. And for me, it worked and made me feel secure all the way kind of through that process, even though I was terrified still of, oh, shit, what if it worst comes to worst? But
I've given advice a lot of times saying that, if you decide you want to come out, you have to be clear that you want to deal with the consequences of it, which could be, having a life that is free of the people who you love and who loved you. That's a potential consequence. And that probably the best way is not to make a big deal out of it. Maybe, I can say this now. You may not even have to use the A word to start with, because that can be shocking. You use whatever word you're comfortable with. Hey, I don't believe that anymore. Or just start being yourself and be honest, because they're going to start asking questions. In my case, I was just getting ready to say I was outed by my uncle. But that's not really true, because I was doing the TV show already. So I was out, my family lived in another town, and they're not going to go looking for atheist content. And I was in the process of writing a book or something along those lines that would explain to them, I hoped, in a way that they would understand. And my uncle was Googling his name, which used to be a thing, and came across me and called me at work. And I won't go through the whole story, because he really didn't out me. But what he did, and I'm in my 30s, and he's like, well, after we had our conversation, he said, I think I'm going to have to call your dad. If you don't tell him, I'm going to tell him. Oh, okay. So I'm 30-something, and my uncle, who's a former medical missionary, is going to tattle. And in hindsight, I can laugh about this too, but at the moment I was like, oh, fuck. Okay, I'll call him now. And hung up, and I called my dad. And my dad had no idea what I was talking about, so he was like, I'm going to go do some research and call you back. And they ended up going to see Lee Strobel and asking him for advice about how to deal with their atheist child of 30-something. And Lee sold them copies of his books.
Of course he did.
And 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to finally meet Lee Strobel in person. And I brought him the book that my mom gave me. I told my mom, thanks, by the way. You can give me books from any apologist you want, but ask me first, because I have a lot of them, and I've already written rebuttals to some of these that you gave me. But I met Lee, and I told him the story, and Lee doesn't debate, so I didn't, ask him if he wanted to debate. But I said, here's a thought. When parents come to you and say, what do we do about our atheist child? Tell them to talk to their fucking kid, because you did nothing useful selling my mom your shitty little books. That segues nicely into this question.
Go for it.
How do you keep your emotions in check when speaking with religious people? Thank you, Rachel. I think if you asked people, they would say, Matt doesn't. Those people don't actually know me because I do. For me, it's kind of straightforward. And I think it used to be the firebrand or diplomat or one or the other, and I'm like, screw that. We need as much of whatever as we can, because people believe for different reasons. They're going to give it up for different reasons. I may not be able to reach somebody that Phil can reach. Phil may not be able to reach somebody that I can reach.
Right. It takes a village.
If you're completely, if you're just passive and questioning, that may be an awesome tactic. If you are in their face, that might also be an awesome tactic. Probably not. I tend to not start there. I tend to make sure that they go negative or louder before me until we're on the show and they say something just awful. And I've made tons of mistakes in the show. Look, that's why I do the show, so that you can learn from my mistakes of where you're a moron, goodbye. That's bad. There's almost no circumstance in which that is a good thing to do, and yet I have done it. More than once. I'm a little slow learner. I didn't find my way out of religion until I was, in my 30s.
I'm sure there's a nice clip reel on YouTube that's just that.
This is why, if there's a question here, I haven't read it yet, but if there's a question about whether or not I'm going to run for office, you could put together a montage clip that makes me look like a fucking monster. And you could put together another clip that makes me look like a saint, letting someone go on for 40 minutes to tell me how much Jesus loves them, or me. But it's not a problem for me in debates and things like that to maintain relative composure until I think it's justified. And most of the times where I've lost my temper, I think it's legit. And I think most people in the room would go, yeah, I'd have lost it way before Matt did. Because what I do in my head, first of all, on the show, I make a game of it. When the call starts, my brain starts going, how quickly can I predict what their argument's going to be from what they started with? Where are they going? And did I get it right? I get it right quite a lot, but that also turns out to be a problem because I'll cut to the chase and not let them hang themselves, which can look kind of bad. But I try to remember that every time I'm speaking, every time I'm doing a debate, every show, it's probably somebody's first introduction to our show, to atheism. And I try to be the best representative that my patience will allow me to be at that moment. And it's one of the reasons why I love the fact that, since Jamie and Eric and Megan and the new crowd of people who are all part of the ACA have come in, we've got 9 programs now that we're doing.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of different approaches and a lot of different personalities. Because when your brain first hears something that's foreign, it says, oh, that's weird, and files it away in a bucket. And then the next time you hear it, it's like, hey, I think I heard something like that before, and it gets a little more normal. And then the third time, your brain goes, oh, wait, there's a pattern here. There's something to pay attention to. So maybe my conversation with somebody is the first time or the third time or in Ray Comfort's case, the 37,585th time, I think was. But you have to keep that in mind. You have to care about what you're doing. Have the right. I'm not doing the show to show that I'm right and you're wrong, or I'm smarter than you and you're an idiot, or I'm morally superior to you, even though I fucking am. I'm actually doing it because I care about these things and it matters. I found my way out, and it's frustrating to me that it took so long. Mm-hmm. And if you have the right motivations, it's not that hard to keep your emotions in check. But here's the thing. You can, in much the same way that I might hang up on somebody, you can do that too. You don't owe anybody an explanation for who you are, what you think. You don't owe anybody a debate at all, ever. You're not required to be in a conversation that you're no longer comfortable being in. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is say, I'd rather not talk about that, it's personal, or I'm not in the mood to talk about that now, or can we pause this conversation, let me think about what you've said and pick it up again another time, and then do that. And if they continue to harass you, but no, don't you understand that when Paul wrote, no, I don't understand, can I go and research it so that I'm just not taking your word for it? And if they keep pushing, they're the asshole.
Right.
They're the ones that are unable to keep their emotion in check.
If they can't respect you, then it's not worth continuing that conversation. to be perfectly honest. But
how do you keep your emotions in check, Phil? What's your...
But I think you kind of touched on a little bit. It's the, being on the show and getting some of the callers that we get coming in. It's very interesting listening to some of the arguments that are there. But, I'm there. I want to have a conversation with those that are actually willing to have an earnest conversation about what it is they believe, whatever that might be. And so, in my mind, that's the purpose that I want. And so to facilitate that purpose as best I can, I'm going to listen to what they have to say. I might touch on some things like, oh, that doesn't quite make sense, or what do you actually mean by that? Because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And, can you clarify that? But it's kind of what you really want to get out of the conversation. Like, I go into it, we're on the show so that we can actually have substantive conversations with people and actually try to make a difference, even if it's not with that call or with someone that's watching. As Matt said, maybe for the first time, this is their first exposure. And if this is somebody's first exposure to this argument and, we're behaving in a certain way or whatever else, well, what are they going to come away thinking? How is this actually going to be effective for them going forward? And so that's how I kind of think about my role on the show and the host. Everybody has their own style, that's for sure, on the show. But it all adds up to having a good conversation and actually being able to, make a difference if we can in someone that's watching or the actual caller themselves. And so, you put the effort into it and it gets much easier. That's probably one of the comments that I see the most often is, how can you stay so calm when they're spouting this nonsense or something like that? And it's just like, well, this is what we do. We try to have a conversation. Like, that's what we're here to do. And so it gets much easier than you think.
There's a demon in our heads that says, stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. Yeah, that's the way my mom would put it. She says she's seen demons.
Oh, okay.
And just for years, I haven't talked specifically about my mom, and so now I'm doling it out in little doses.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious.
Now everybody gets the inside look into the last decade or so. What's next?
I will go ahead and read this. This is from someone that wanted to remain anonymous that PM'd me. But what is the most ridiculous belief or story that you earnestly held when you were a believer? I guess
all of them.
There's nothing that jumps out for you specifically? Something that...
I try to remember exactly what I believed. And in many cases... It's what I was talking about earlier. I'm not convinced that I ever really knew exactly what I believed. It was just, hey, I'm going and all these people around me believe. And so when you say there was a talking snake or a talking donkey, it's like, well, God can do anything. So clearly that's not impossible. And I don't even think that talking snakes and talking donkeys are remotely in the realm of the most ridiculous things that I believe. Perhaps the notion that I was born bad and was somehow broken, and that the solution to this was to have this blood sacrifice of an individual that was divine so that God could create a loophole for rules that he's in charge of in order to save me from what he wants to do to me if I don't accept that. And then telling other people how much I believed that. That was probably, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's mine. I was thinking about this question, trying to narrow it down to something, because you could just say, the whole religion itself, but I was trying to think of something that stood out. But I remember when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, something along those lines, and the topic of discussion in the church was the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, so if you're not familiar, just
Matthew 5.
Just look it up, 5 through 7. Just look that up, but. So they went through the whole spiel, turn the other cheek, all that wonderful good stuff. And so somehow in my mind, as they were talking, they were going through the whole spiel, and in my mind, I didn't hear Sermon on the Mount. I heard Sermon on the Mound with a D. And so ridiculous, but as a child, the way that my mind kind of put that together as they were talking about, well, Jesus was up, on this, giving all of these proclamations.
Like a pitcher.
That's exactly what my mind put together, that Jesus, it was like, I imagined this baseball field where it was this huge, crowd of people around, and there was this raised pitcher's mound, and here was Jesus. And I remember it was, the picture I had in my head was like New York Yankees like a jersey type of thing on, but he was just there in the middle of the baseball field. And I had that in my mind for a while until I think it was maybe a half a year later when I found out that I had heard that wrong, that it wasn't on the mound, it was on the mount. And it was just a random factoid, but I was like, well,
bases are loaded, bottom of the ninth.
And I really fucking believed
Jesus steps up to the mound. Pontius Pilate is at bat. Can he save this game?
Serve you the verses. Well, yeah, it was random as hell, but yeah, I really believed that for a while, and it was amazing.
He can not only save the game, he can save us all.
But do you have another one?
There's a couple I want to save towards closer to the end, but okay. I posted a video about this the other day, so I won't have a whole lot to say. We can keep it shorter. Lori asks, since the burning of Notre Dame in Paris, there's been a lot of discussion on social media as to how atheist communities should respond. Many say the church should be torn down because of what it represents. Many atheists applauded the destruction. How should our community respond? Should we tear down the Parthenon? It's in ruins. Here's the thing. There's a difference. I'm not going to do the whole video. Did anybody see the video I put up the other day? Yeah, cool. So for you guys, I'll keep this really short. I'm not going to be donating any money to rebuild it because the Catholic Church is fucking rich and so is France. It transcends merely being a church. It's a historical monument. It's a museum. It is a source of income. It's a tourist thing. And there are people who are like, Sarah Silverman famously pointed out, well, we should just turn the Vatican into a homeless shelter. That'd be a much better use. Yes, I would agree that would be a much better use. But the people who were saying, why are we spending money to rebuild Notre Dame when there are people starving and there's other things we can put that money to? It's a little short-sighted to say that because the rebuilding is going to create jobs. It's going to spike tourism, that money. The problem is how that money is being used after the fact. Exactly as it is with any other church, actually. I just donated to my church so that they would help the homeless and they kept 98 cents of my dollar, but I'm never going to know that because they don't have to report anything about their fucking income because they're exempt. So I think we should tax the fuck out of the churches. They should not get a tax-exempt status until they can demonstrate they're actually doing something in the public good, not just a place for people to come donate part of their check and put on their Sunday best and hang out with all the other fucking hypocrites that they were partying with the night before. I will be happy. I was sad when Notre Dame burned. It had nothing to do with the church because the Notre Dame issue to me is not remotely about religion. Yes, it's a church. But that's not what that is. That's an 800-year-old historic monument. And if they decided not to rebuild it, I'd be a little sad, but I'd be okay with it. But at the end of the day, my money's going to go to causes that I value and believe in, and I'll let the church and the French government rebuild it. And then one day I'll go and see it. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous Gothic architecture. Yeah. My ex-wife loves little white churches. We even had a coffee table book on our, well, it wasn't really on a coffee table, but a book there that was all just pictures of little white churches. And as we drove all around the country, anytime we'd see a little white church, we'd pull over and stop and she'd get a picture with it. Anybody thinks that we were like applauding their religion, they should spend 10 minutes in discussion with us after the picture's taken, because there's definitely nothing pro-religion in that. I don't want to see historical monuments torn down just because they have a tie to a dead or dying religion. And an act of God like this is fundamentally different than when somebody attacks a church, a mosque, a synagogue, a temple. And when those happen, the atheist community has by and large stepped up alongside others to raise money and denounce those actions. As a matter of fact, the atheist community, the secular community at large, is probably the single best defender of religious freedom and religious rights, because we know how important it is, because the freedoms that allow you to, believe in talking snakes are what allow us to say, can you prove it? And not get locked up. And if we're going to be in that position of protecting religious liberty, I don't want to take anybody's religion away by force or by legislation. I want them to give it up for good reasons. Right. And so if there's an attack on a religious building, then it's nice that the atheist community steps up and helps out. And I hope it sends a signal to all these pious individuals who I debate, who never step up to denounce Westboro They never step up to announce these. Steven Anderson. Oh, that's misogyny he's preaching. You know why they don't? They can't. Those people are on sound biblical footing. God hates fags. It's right there. Different language. My mom probably thinks they're terrible in the way that they go about spreading Jesus. She agrees with the position entirely, and that's why she can't denounce them. And this is why even the moderate and liberal theists who are out there who are like, rah, rah, I'm on your side. Look, I'm Pete and I'm gay and I'm going to talk to Pence about what's wrong. Yes, okay, please. You're not taking a stand against religion. You're bickering with somebody who you agree with on the vast majority of things within the scope of the doctrine, except for the things that affect you. I mean, is Pete going to be calling out Mike Pence for his homosexual bigotry if he wasn't gay? Well, how can there even be a gay Christian church? I know there's tons of them. I have friends that are at them. I go to them on occasion and visit. Well, we've chosen not to pay attention to that verse. How about you choose not to pay attention to the rest of them and we can get on with living life? That was a question about Notre Dame.
But
what's your opinion? What, in your opinion, is the best book you've ever read on atheism and why? This is from Brad.
Just the best book altogether. Trying to think.
I'll go while you're thinking. I always recommend Guy P. Harrison's 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in a God. Yeah. Not because it's the best one to prepare you for debates or get you to understand doctrine. It's approachable by anybody. It's 50 short essays where real people have said, here's why I believe, and then Guy writes an essay explaining it. I think it's accessible to everybody. It's a book I'd love to give my mom. Maybe I'll do that for Mother's Day. Maybe I'll include a little note in the front that says, before we stuff you in the box, I would really like for you to stop believing garbage. Happy Mother's Day. Love, Matt. I would never do that, by the way. That's only for the people who heard the letter I got. I'll keep the high ground. But that's the one I recommend most often.
I think God is Not Great was mine. I had the audiobook, so it was awesome to actually listen to the audiobook. But that was mine. That's the one that sticks out to me because I used to just listen to him while I was at work. Before I even got really started with the Atheist Community of Austin, or really coming up for the show, it would just kind of be in the background, and that's the one I would go with. I would probably say God is Not Great. Yeah, it was a good one. It was a good one. So if you haven't, I'm not sure how many people in here just haven't explored Christopher Hitchens' work at all, but that was a good one for me.
All right, what else we got?
I'm not sure if we want to say this one later on, but Ari on Facebook asked, what was the most ridiculous call you've ever taken on AXP? Got to go in your memory banks there.
I'm so tempted to just say all of them again, but those are not good answers. I think probably there were several. There was a guy who called years ago who went by the name Three Eyes. There's a couple. I'll run them down real quick. Three Eyes would call in sometimes about his ghost stories, but he gave us instructions on how we could prove that the spirit world is real. And it involved constructing a wooden frame with a mirror in it, and you had to either use nails and not screws, or screws and not nails, I forget which one. And then you needed a big long piece of rope. And what you would do is you'd take this mirror out to a creek or somewhere else where there was running water, and you would hold the mirror under the water and gaze into it. And this would create a portal to the spirit realm. And you needed the rope with a friend to hang on to the end of the rope so that when you got sucked in, they could pull you back out. That was a good one. There's also the one that other people, I think it got listed as there's the best call ever who answered all of his own questions. There was also the guy who was like, if we're...
Now I'm curious.
Russell was trying to explain to this guy that essentially our bodies work like chemical batteries, that we process, light and food and stuff like that to give us energy. Mm-hmm. And he was explaining that the sun is ultimately the source of all this. And probably wasn't as clear on the description as it could have been. And the guy said, if that's the case, then why don't I get electrocuted in the shower? And why don't I die when the sun goes down? And I was just like, read a fucking book. And which was bad, but I have to admit it's a call that stuck with me for probably 10 or more years.
That is funny. Yeah, I remember a call. It was Russell and I that were on the call, and there was a caller, I would just say with a heavy accent, I'll put it that way, but he was angry at us, specifically us, like the Atheist Community of Austin. He was angry at us, and of course we were trying to figure out, well, why particularly us, like what the hell do we do for it? And he was mad at us because we weren't being as fervent and fighting against what he called idolatry and worship. And of course, we clarified, what are you talking about? So he was referencing, like, if you buy tickets to a concert, so you go to a Beyonce concert, you are engaging in idol worship by doing so. And us as an atheist organization, we should be fighting against such things. So he equated all forms of, going to see a performer or trying to get their signature, like all that kind of stuff. He was taking that as actual worship. And as we were trying to explain to him, like, no, that's not the way that we see it or how most people would see that at all. He referenced his niece and the fact that his niece had boy band pictures on her wall. And he was so taken aback by that because she was worshiping these boy bands on a wall. I'm not sure if it's like 1D or somebody that was on the wall.
That's something we should definitely put a fucking stop to.
But so as he's asking, he was just like, I don't understand why my niece would have a picture of a boy band on her wall. She's idolizing.
I don't understand why my niece bought that vibrating toothbrush. when she bought the boy band poster.
But as we're...
Why? Sex positive people. Your kink is not my kink, but your kink's okay unless it's boy bands.
But as we're going through this explanation, Russell starts going into, when people reach a certain age, they may start recognizing that they have certain attractions towards someone. And so this conversation ensued for about the next 10 minutes. And at the end of it, I was like, I can't believe that we just had to talk sitting here on the fucking Atheist Experience, courtesy of the ACA. We went through the whole thing, and it was just like, this is unreal at the end of this call. But I'm not sure if he was serious or not. He didn't seem like a troll. We didn't take it as one because he did seem earnest, but he was really mad at us because we're not fighting against this idolatry. Ticket sales are through the roof for Drake and whomever else that's performing, and it's all this idol worship all over the place, and it was our responsibility to do something about it. That was probably the most ridiculous.
Well, he's done his part of it. He called an atheist show to get them to do what he wants them to do.
Like, what we gonna do? Like we're gonna take on the fucking beehive and say, like, no, you can't go to that concert. Like, what are we supposed to do on there? Who's listening to us? Get out of here. But yeah, that was some ridiculous, a ridiculous call that definitely sticks with me. What you got?
Randall asks, how do I respond to a Christian who uses the phrase, but that's in the Old Testament, while simultaneously using the Old Testament to push the Ten Commandments or anti-LGBT rights? I think you just kind of came up with your own response. Here's the thing, but that's the Old Testament. Correct, and that's where we get the origins of life, original sin, every prophecy that Matthew and other Christians wanted to try to claim that Jesus fulfilled. And so when we dump all that out, you have a story about a guy with no past, no history, no scripture to point to, who comes along and says, hey, guess what? I think I can fix some things. And then they killed him, and that was the end. Oh, spoiler alert. That's mine and probably the Jefferson Bible's version. Yeah, there's a video on my Atheist Debate channel about almost everything. But there's one about the Old Testament too, and that's the short version. But the truth is, I mean, even when you're talking to apologists, they're going to recognize that you don't have the Ten Commandments. If you're going to throw out the Old Testament, then let's first of all tear down all those Ten Commandments monuments you've been polluting our fucking capitals with for years, where the Supreme Court invented a grandfather clause for the one in Texas. while making the Kentucky one come down, which is how I got on the show, by the way, years ago. I wrote an article about that and was already active in the community. So that was the first show I did was on the Ten Commandments case. Basically, in much the same way that Jews don't recognize Jesus as the Messiah, that's the thing they're trying to avoid. They recognize that there are people out there who are familiar with the Old Testament, and the Old Testament is just full of all these problems. Here's the dirty little secret. What happens to you when you die according to the Old Testament? Who the hell knows? You're dead. You've gone on to sleep with the fathers. That's why Judaism doesn't have a very good understanding of an afterlife or anything else. Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Who knows? Do what you want if you're Reform. If you're, Hasidic or conservative, that things are going to change a little bit. It's only in the New Testament that you get eternal punishment for finite crimes. It's only in the New Testament. I mean, granted, we stopped killing as many animals as we used to just because God loves the smell of blood and guts and smoke, which in Texas we call barbecue. But we came up with this new sacrifice that isn't a sacrifice because Jesus had a shitty weekend and then went on to be God. I'll do that. I'll do that right now, actually. If I knew for sure, you don't even have to let me be God. Just let me come back.
I'm not sure if we have the tools for that. Yeah. I think we'll have that here.
Yeah, you don't get to throw out the Old Testament, and it is only the weakest of the cookie-cutter Christians who don't recognize that right off the bat, which is about, 60, 70, 80% of them, I would say.
I have this question here, I guess one that was just given to me. So this is from Anonymous, that's what it has on here. But it says, I don't have the time or emotional energy to start a podcast, build a grassroots organization, etc. I do, however, support the proliferation of ideas from those who are the faces of the atheist movement. As an atheist who wants to see change, I don't feel like rallies and conferences alone are enough. How do you envision actual progress in advancing a secular agenda? What small actions might I take that aren't going to devolve into arguments? And this question, it kind of leads into one of the other topics that I kind of wanted to discuss, but I think it was Edward Tabish, maybe from last night. I was kind of talking about this, about the blitz of bills that are being pushed in so many states around.
Is Eddie in here?
Oh, maybe not.
I know there's a great talk last night. If you missed it, or even if you heard it, you should probably listen to it again.
Right, at the Wars Dinner last night. But there's a bill in Texas, for example. I just wanted to choose a example local to us, but it's Senate Bill 17, and it was pushed by Senator Charles Perry. And essentially, the bill would prohibit the state's hundreds of occupational licensing boards from enacting rules or regulations that would burden an applicant or license holder's free exercise of religion. And essentially what that means is it would give those licensed by the state. So, your lawyers, your plumbers, you have to get certified, and you have to have the certifications on file with the state of Texas in order to practice in certain professions. But it gives them the ability to fight to keep their license if it's threatened because of actions they took based on their faith. And what that translates to, it's already passed the Texas Senate already, and it's just waiting deliberation on the House side. But I would agree with this person that kind of wrote this question, that rallies and conferences, for the problems that we're facing, considering all the changes that we've had on the federal judiciary, the Supreme Court, all of these things that are going, all of these bills that are trying to be pushed that are trying to enshrine religious freedom, which translates into discrimination for the rest of everyone else, it's not going to be enough to just go to the rallies and then go home and just wait for the next rally to come and show up for that one. Actually being active, making a call to your representative to let them know that, hey, you do have an atheist constituent here, and I'm very concerned about what you're putting forth, because you're saying that I don't matter. If someone discriminates against me or denies me to say, or a plumber comes to my house, and because he sees I'm there with my partner, well, I don't want to serve this establishment. I'm not going to honor this contract because, well, my sincerely held religious beliefs are that, gay people are going to hell, and I cannot do anything, or baking a cake or whatever else that's there. But it's trying to enshrine these laws, and I'm not sure if the hope is for a challenge to happen so that it gets to the federal bench and they get a favorable ruling so that these things can be enshrined and become the law of the land on this side. And so, the little actions that you can take, everybody is different. Everyone has different abilities. People have responsibilities or whatever it is. But being active, being visible in your community, letting your representatives know that you are around, that you support women's rights, because there's so many bills like the one passed in Ohio about the 6-week ban on abortion here in Ohio. And these laws are propagating all over the place, and us going to rallies and just going to conferences, which is wonderful for community, for building the coalition, for actually exchanging ideas and being heard, and getting a battle plan as to where to go forward. But the important thing is you must go forward. You have to get out there and contact your representatives. Actually jump out there, because if we don't do anything, the problems that we're seeing around, they're not going to fix themselves. They're not going to get better by just attending these rallies or kind of just staying at home and not doing anything except for coming out to these. You have to get out in those communities, and not everyone has that ability to do so. And, we should all recognize that with our own personal journeys coming out of this. But for those who can, it is vitally important for stuff like this, for this type of bill that it's not even a thinly veiled thing. It is, yes, people that are licensed by the state will have the ability to discriminate as long as it's a sincerely held belief.
It's my sincerely held belief that they can go fuck themselves if they're going to try to do this in ways that harm people. This person's exactly right. Anybody who came to this conference thinking that, the American Atheist 2019 convention is going to change the world? No. It's not going to change anything but the people who were here and the people who see it and hear about it. And that's the reason to do it. We don't have a conference to go, we'll have a conference this month and next month and next month and 2 months after that, and then the world will be fixed. The purpose of the conference is to get people together so that you're not alone, so that you are hopefully more informed on the issues that you might be able to do something about, so that you can meet up with people in your area that you had no idea were in your area. What I want to do, and this was not my original idea, but I think it's great. I want to have an American Atheist Conference in 2020, hopefully. It's difficult to do, but tape out the outline of the United States on the floor, get all the chairs off, and have everybody go stand where they live. And now you can immediately see who's near you. That's the way you're going to build the connections. The purpose of the conference is to make sure people are informed, that they're excited. And I have my own 6-week ban, by the way. If 6 weeks from now you're no longer excited by the things you heard here enough to participate, come back to another conference because you needed another dose. But we need people doing stuff. I love conventions. I love speaking at conventions. I love hanging out at conventions. I love meeting people. I love hearing their stories. This is what you do to build the community. And then you say, go do shit. Go in the other room tomorrow and stuff as many boxes with food for the homeless as we can. Go talk to your representatives. Make sure you're informed. Listen to what Allison Gill has to say about what's coming up, where we need to be focused, what you can do, who you can call, who you can write a letter to. And if you're worried about, I don't want to do anything that's maybe going to cause an argument or anything else, then you can financially support these things. You can support them anonymously on Messenger and other things. You can be sure that you can call your representatives and now say, just the other day I saw this poll saying that non-religious people are now the largest group. If we break it down like this, and even if we're not the largest, we're 20 some odd percent. Well, that's more than Jews. Jews have the Anti-Defamation League, they have lobbyists. Why are you coming up with all this God talk? What have you done for the secular community? And why are you working in opposition to the values that we are presenting and supporting? You've got data on your side because of years of conventions, because of years of people doing TV shows. We are building, we are growing. The convention's not going to fix anything. The convention is us getting together and saying, hey, let's go fix things. That's what this is about. And there's a follow-up question here from Mo that says, I'm often asked why I'm an activist and accused of being as bad as an evangelical. Do you have a good elevator speech about why you're an activist? Yeah, because I want to leave this world better than the way I found it. I'd like for us to not keep breaking things. I'm an activist because that's the only way you're actually going to change anything. I'm an activist because I've seen the effects of being an activist. You can fill out as many online petitions as you want with thousands of signatures. I've never seen any of them that were particularly effective. I know some of them spawned movements that became far more effective. I'm an activist because I don't know any other way to affect change, and I'd like to change things. It's interesting that you would say that I'm just as bad as an evangelical. I'm glad you think they're bad. However, I'm not going door to door and knocking on people's doors to say, hey, have you stopped believing in Jesus yet? I can help. I don't make outgoing calls from my TV show. I have the conversations with the people who call us because they're consenting and they want to have those. So I don't think I'm in the same category as them. And what you're doing is you're confusing passion and commitment to an idea with passion and commitment to another idea. So let's talk about which of those ideas is actually beneficial. And then you'll find out what activism is all about.
Yeah. And
what you got next? Oh, this is still Senate Bill 17. Yeah, I stomped all over you. Sorry.
No, you're good. But I wanted to put what Matt said was right. We've got to have more actions there. And to put a finer point on this particular bill that's in Texas, let me give you two quotes here from the person who actually put forth this lovely piece of legislation, which was Senator Perry out of Texas. He says, and I'll apologize to every senator on the floor publicly for any offense that I created, but it's that important to me because it's not about the here and now. It's about where we're going to spend our eternity. It's unfortunate that we're living in a day and time that people of faith that are very well balanced can't practice their faith openly in a public square anymore. I'll end the quote there and say,
when are
that's
evangelicals
some bullshit.
and conservatives actually going to get equality in this country? When we beat you down to where we're actually equal and you get rid of your privileged position, that's when you guys get equality.
All right. And trying to use that type of, for lack of a better word, bullshit rhetoric to try to put it in legislation that discriminates on marginalized communities is ridiculous. And that's something that we're going to have to fight against. Solving these problems with human actions, it's the basis of why I like activism so much, why I do so much community service, because the problems that we see around us are not going to get solved unless we get out there and do something about those problems, recognizing that they're there, not ignoring them. And for those of us that can, actually get out there running for office, if you're able. Not everyone can do that, but like Gail Jordan, who was the recipient of an award just last night at the awards dinner, is an awesome person, really is. But that makes things more visible, being visible in your local community, even if it's not everyone can do it, but if you can, it is worth that struggle to do so, because there's so much coming down the pike and so much we're going to have to fight that sitting on the sidelines, that shit just ain't going to work. It really isn't. So, I don't want to just preach at you, but for lack of a better term, be active in your community, do your thing, ask people for help, find out what you can do on your side. You have the power to make a difference, whatever difference that may be, however small that might be, but all of us making a change together, we can move mountains around this piece. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Amen. I have, we got like 15 minutes left or something.
I don't even know.
Give or take.
Where's our time keep?
It's all right. I want to make sure we clear out in time for Anthony, but I've got some rapid fire questions for you, Phil.
All right.
What keeps you going? Jen wants to know.
What choice do I have? I got this life to live. I only have a small time to do it. Hell, let's make it work.
Yeah, somebody asked me something similar about, I've hosted the TV show for now 14, 15 years, something like that. It's, hey, when are you going to stop? Well, probably when somebody kills me. As soon as the ACA says, hey, we really think you should stop doing the show, that's when I stop doing the show. There could be other things that cause it to happen. I can't not do it. And a good example of this, I started working with the ACA. People were warning me, don't do too much, because I was the president, I was the librarian, I'm hosting the show, and all this. You're going to burn out. You're going to burn out. You're going to burn out. Curiously, most of the people who said that are no longer part of the organization, and I'm still there. But Phil Ferguson was supposed to come down to the Atheist Experience, and Chicago got iced in 50 below, and so he messages me and he says, "Hey, I'm not going to make it down this weekend," and wow, I just realized how bad this is going to sound. I was like, yeah, sorry to hear that. And then I messaged Mark and said, Phil can't make it down this weekend for the show, so can I do the show with Tracie? And Mark was like, yeah, I'm a junkie. What's the worst thing someone said to you when they found out you were an atheist? Ashton asks.
Probably that, goodness, say.
But you're so nice.
I don't know. I've heard of that, what happened.
Yep.
Something had to have
What
happened to you. It couldn't just
We
be.
could play bingo with this. What happened is on there. But you're so nice.
Did somebody hurt you? Did someone die and that caused you some depression and strain? Are you mad at God? That's a big one that's there. But it's never that, I actually, examined my beliefs and I found it more rational, and my understanding that this was no longer belief that I held because I had no good reasons for believing it. But that doesn't usually seem to be one of the options that are presented to me when they put that back. It's always something condescending, but yeah, those, why are you mad at God? That's some bull. So that's fun stuff.
Nobody's ever said anything unkind to me when they found out I was an atheist.
That's it. Oh, I've got a little quick one here for you. How did it feel to lose to Eric and Jamie during fundraising?
Oh.
And that was from Jade Young here.
It felt amazing. It was wonderful. I'm glad those guys are doing well. Someday they'll be at the big kids table. I love that Jamie thought that I was perhaps cheating a little bit by putting in the last $40, while simultaneously 3 or 4 people on the other side of the glass were also reaching for the $40 to make the gap. And then when it was over, it was, hey, we got another donation, but you don't get to count that because the show's over. And then all of a sudden, well, if I can't count the donation that came in after my show, how is it that you can count the donation that came in at the end of my show? Because your show had been over for hours by the time you got several $100s to put you just a little bit ahead. But hey, you guys win. You're awesome. Who's really awesome? The people who are really awesome are the people who watch the show, the people who support the show on the Patreon project, the people who come to the conventions and laugh and cheer along. I don't care. I've done plenty of fundraising competitions. I ended up with a pink beard, which I loved, by the way, because we raised like $15,000 to send kids to Camp Quest.
It was an awesome beard.
I will compete with anybody, and we can talk shit back and forth, and then when it's done, we give the money to the people who need it, and we'll go out and split a bottle of champagne and make a big deal out of it on the show. So good for them, because those guys, see, Jamie's counter argument would be, yes, Matt, but you've been doing the show for 14 years, and we've been doing it for like 2, and we're pretty much caught up. True. And if we went and looked at all those episodes of Talk Heathen and kind of said, oh, which ones have the most views? How many of those was I on? That was my little snarky thing to the guys I love, and then somebody gave me a better line, which is, that's cool, Jamie, but how many times have you been on Atheist Experience?
Oh, dear.
Oh, shit. No, we are genuinely all good friends. The competition it's not a dirty secret. The competition is a way to get more money, which we needed to be able to get everybody up here, and we are incredibly grateful, and I'm absolutely over the moon proud of what all those individuals in the ACA are doing with the new shows. I hope they get to the point where every show is more popular than anything I've ever done or said, because that means we've won.
Awesome. Yours?
This one's important. Yeah. As a former Christian, I'm bothered by some atheists who seem to see atheist gatherings as an opportunity to bash and make fun of religious people, as if all religious people are idiots. And I want to say that used to be me, and I wasn't an idiot, and my Christian friends aren't idiots. I feel people expressing this kind of attitude are perpetuating the stereotype of atheists as angry, hostile people, and it's counterproductive. What are your thoughts on this? How can we discourage this behavior in our community? This is something that's near and dear to my heart. I have tried over the years, I've fucked it up a lot, to make sure that I'm attacking ideas as stupid and not people as stupid. And also, we've had to change the language and, some words I just don't use anymore and everything else, but to make sure that the target of what you're talking about is the idea and not the person. My IQ didn't go up when I stopped believing. I was a believer for many, many years. I may be colloquially smarter because there are things that I know now that I didn't know then, but that has nothing to do, it's not a function of my religion. I debate seriously wicked, intelligent people on a regular basis who are believers. I am fine with ridicule of ideas and would prefer that we didn't ridicule people. I know I've done it. I know other people have. And when you come to something like the American Atheist Convention and you hear that, here's the thing to understand. The people that are doing that were likely also religious and don't necessarily view themselves as idiots. This is a cathartic exercise when you see this sort of thing, when you hear these sorts of comments at the Atheist Convention from people who have been stuck in a corner every Christmas surrounded by religious people having to keep their mouth shut. These are the people who have been the subject of ridicule from religious people without them even realizing it. I'm the closeted atheist in the room, and these people are saying that I'm born bad, that I'm broken, that I need going to hell, that I'm deserving of all of this, that they've got the magic solution. These are the people who are saying, oh, because I love someone who's the same gender as I am, or because I don't identify with a particular gender or the gender that you tried to assign me at birth, that all of a sudden you're broken and you're bad and you're evil. The people who are criticizing religious people aren't going at it from the sense of, your IQ is clearly low. They're not going from the standpoint of, clearly you are uninformed. Clearly you are a worse person. It is, you have been fucking up the world and shitting on people like me. And now I'm surrounded by the people that I like. And yeah, we'll probably talk a little shit about you. But we were there too. It's a way of going, I'm free, and I'm around people who know what I went through. And so while I'm very, very particular about the words that I use in a debate, and perhaps overly pedantic, and I'll talk for hours in case you haven't figured it out, in debates I don't say God does not exist, because now that's an assertion that requires me to actually defend it. And I think it's an unfalsifiable proposition. I think it's something that you cannot possibly demonstrate. But I also think it's a strategic mistake to shift the burden of proof. The burden of proof is on the people who claim that God exists. But when I'm hanging out at the Atheist Convention, I'm happy to say, there ain't no fucking God. Because I'm not in a debate. I'm talking to the other people who figured out, wow, we have what we mean. When I say there's no God, I mean, I have absolutely no reason to believe that there's a God. Nobody's presented any evidence. It's embarrassing that for thousands of years we've had debate after debate because some bigot doesn't like the fact that some dude kissed a dude, and now we've got to spend 20 years talking about the same issue over and over again. So I feel you. I don't think religious people are idiots. If I did, I wouldn't spend time talking to them and trying to change their mind. But you've also got to cut people a little slack because religion has done massive damage to people in this room and around the world at conventions. And so if they get a little snarky at a gathering like this, take it in stride, because it's light years better than what they put up with and what the religious community is trying to do when they attempt to legislate their beliefs to fundamentally change the world we live in so that we don't have the freedoms and rights that we fucking deserve.
much time
we
have.
Two quick other ones and we're done.
All right. I'll go ahead and read this one real fast. For those, this is by Matt Collier.
Okay.
For those who use Pascal's wager,
Stop.
For those,
No.
this is
I was kidding. Go ahead.
Read my question. For those who use Pascal's wager for theists claim, yet deny climate change, can we use the basic premise of Pascal's wager to support climate change? Is it, I guess this is an example, is it better to try and be wrong than not to try at all? I would strongly caution no. And the reason I say that is using Pascal's wager, we ridicule that because, you're asking this question, you're saying, oh, if you're, believing in this, if this will cause no harm, therefore, if you don't believe it, you may go to hell or something like that. But of course that, disregards all the different religious beliefs that are out there that have whole different sets of requirements of what their afterlife's cause and anything else. But for climate change, since it has evidence to back it up, if there is evidence that's there, I would say to use that approach to say, this is what we're seeing. This is what the data is showing. We're always talking about, logic and reason and evidence in the arguments on the show and our personal conversations. I would also say that that's also something that you should apply to that conversation. Just saying that you might as well, otherwise, that's not an effective argument versus saying we have data that shows that we are increasing, the CO2 levels on this planet. Wow, that's a little earlier. Is our time up? Are we good? Okay.
He's not playing us off.
But why not use the evidence at hand and actually talk about that issue? If we use that for all the arguments that we use on the show and for a lot of the debates that we have, shouldn't it be good enough also when you're trying to convince someone for climate change? I mean, you would hope so, and you would hope that would be convincing, but using Pascal's wager to try to convince someone that they should do something about climate change, I'm not sure if that's the most effective way.
It may or may not be. In the spirit of Matt's question, my answer is kind of yes, and I've seen people do this, but what if we make the world a better place and we were wrong? That is a version. That is the look at the trees, Pascal's wager for climate change that may actually be effective with somebody. But yeah, I'm good with. Don't call it Pascal's. Don't call it anything like that. Just, but look at the polls. All right, last question, and then we're gonna go. And I want to thank everybody. I always love coming to these things. I'm thrilled that Phil was able to be here with this for me, and a special thank you to Vern and Ben and Cecil and everybody who does the work behind the scenes.
Megan out there as well somewhere.
Phil, this one's yours. Cecile asks, how do I deal with asshole kids at school?
Wow. Oh man, kids can be assholes. That's definitely, my goodness. My experience in high school, there was definitely some bullying that was there, when, especially like me being gay and that kind of evolving out when I was there. But I was at least tall and large not to get some of the ire that other people did experience that I see around. But I mean, with that, kids are going to be assholes. Like there's a limit of what you can do about it. Like, I mean, I had my own crew that was only like my own people that I would hang out with. And, as people were being assholes or trying to say something, trying to talk about me or whatever else, I didn't have time for that. I tried to put them out of my mind. If they try to do something else more confrontational, then that's a different conversation.
I think a lot of adults and people in the community are going to give advice about things like, you can get with the Seco Student Alliance. You can start a Seco Student Alliance at your school. You should know what your rights are. You should know how you should go interact with the administrations. And all that's true and good. I'm here to tell you the dirty little secret that a lot of other people in the room won't tell you. I graduated high school with 900 and some odd other kids. I remember the names and interact with 2 of them. It'll get better. And you won't have to deal with them forever. And at some point, all the ones that were assholes to you, if you run into them again, they'll probably need something from you or want something from you. And then you can choose whether or not you're going to be the better person, or say, you remember that time back in high school?
All the way back when.
It's not an easy thing. There are no easy answers. It reminds me of, Matt, what are you going to do if you die? And you have to stand before God, and he's real, and he sends you to hell. I'll go to hell knowing that I'm morally superior to the thuggish piece of shit that sent me there for not believing on a lack of evidence.
I was honest with myself.
And the same thing applies to dealing with kids in school. You're in the right. If somebody's bullying you, that's a defect in their character, not yours. Keep that in mind and realize that that's not going to last forever. You've got an amazing life in front of you, and you've got a community here that actually cares, and everybody's been through that at some point or another. Mm-hmm. You're going to make it, and I know, because if you weren't, you probably wouldn't have had the temerity to write down that question and ask it. That already tells me how strong you are and that you're going to be fine.
Yeah. So find your community and support each other, do that, and hopefully you can get through it just fine. But I think we're reaching.
We are done. Thank you, American Atheist, Cincinnati, Ohio, 2019. I'm Matt Delaney. This is Phil Session. There's our crew. We'll be out and about for pictures and hanging out. Thank you.
Everybody take care.